Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 272, The World of Ice and Fire. Deep within the deep red vortex, a suffocating aura could be felt, as if an ancient and ferocious beast was roaring and lurking, waiting for something. However, if one looked into the depths of the dark red vortex, he or she could see countless dark red specks continuously gathering. What's that? Staring at the dark red vortex with widened eyes, the white tiger was filled with disbelief. If it were not for that familiar aura, he would have jumped up by now. That oppressive aura made him feel suffocated, and even breathing became difficult. Master's strength has improved once again. As she looked up, a look of astonishment appeared on the face of the beautiful girl wrapped in leaves, thorns at the sight of the dark red vortex in the sky. At the peak of the Himalayan mountains. After a deep look at the slowly rotating dark red vortex in the sky, Wuxia was all smiles. However, in a moment he actively withdrew his spiritual energy and dissipated the dark red vortex in the sky. If such a fire attribute divine ability were to fall, nearly half of the misty mountains would be reduced into a sea of flames. Not to mention, Wuxia had only used 20% of his spiritual energy. If he were to mobilize a bit more of his spiritual energy, the majority of the misty mountains would likely not be able to withstand it. The might of a divine ability could not to be taken lightly. Compared to the unique abilities, the might of a divine ability was on a whole new level. As for the specific difference between divine abilities and unique abilities, Wuxia could not explain it either. However, he felt that divine abilities were like an imprint engraved somewhere in his body. When needed, he could unleash their power by connecting with the imprint through his spiritual energy. Unique abilities, on the other hand, were different. They were more like a deep utilization of one's own body. Whether it was the flying willow leaf blade or the mastery of mist, it was all the same. Divine abilities are more like a power of principles. After making a comment, a plan formed in Wuxia's mind. Gathering divine abilities is a necessity now, not just to significantly increase my strength but also to prepare for the future. Subconsciously, Wuxia felt that his advancement in the future would have certain requirements for divine abilities. Thinking of this, Wuxia's gaze turned to the north. There, another ice attribute spirit stone mine was waiting for him. With that ice attribute spirit stone mine and enough evolution points, his spiritual energy would undergo another explosive increase, and he might even obtain an ice attribute divine ability. At that moment, as if sensing something, Wuxia's eyes suddenly narrowed slightly, flickering with joy. They're back. As he spoke, the mist that shrouded the misty mountains dispersed to both sides, revealing a passage. Shortly afterward, screech, a high-pitched cry reverberated through the mountains as an inferno bird carrying 9 tails appeared at the horizon. Master, it's done. Before they even arrived, 9 tails transmitted the good news. Well done. Nodding in approval, Wuxia's gaze turned to a charred figure held by the inferno bird. It looked very robust, standing at a height of 3 meters. However, it was on its last breaths. What was even more terrifying was that its entire body was ash black, as if it had walked out of a pile of charcoal. Occasionally, whenever it exhaled, it breathed flickers of flame. Is this the Tier 2 Transcendent Polar Bear? Surprised, Wuxia's tree root broke soil and shot into the sky. After a moment, as if sensing Wuxia's tree root, the inferno bird decisively dropped this half-dead figure. Immediately afterward, Wuxia's tree root coiled around this charred figure. However, after a moment, Wuxia's pupils shrank. Because at this moment he could feel an ice-cold sensation making its way up his root. Master, this polar bear is extremely stubborn and refuses to surrender. Complaining in a hint of frustrated voice, 9 tails appeared and approached Wuxia. Stubborn really? Wuxia asked in a doubtful voice, feeling a bit curious. Yes, this guy would rather be burned to death by me than submit. Furthermore, on the way back, this guy, despite being battered and bruised, nearly injured the transcendent monk vulture. I see. Wuxia slightly narrowed his eyes as a hint of coldness appeared on his face. Tier 2 Transcendents had intelligence no less inferior to humans, and coupled with their terrifying strength, taming them was no easy feat after all. Taming just a few Tier 1 Transcendent Inferno birds needed 1 or 2 months, let alone a terrifying existence like Tier 2 Transcendent. Thinking of this, Wuxia made up his mind. The next moment, a deafening, mournful howl resounded through the sky. Looking up, the tree root that had returned with the charred figure coiled around it was expanding and contracting, fiercely absorbing the polar bear's spiritual energy. Wuxia's tree root could plunder the spiritual energy of living beings and transform it into his own. Although it was a bit inefficient, considering the spiritual energy was contained in a Tier 2 transcendent, he could still gain spiritual energy in tens of thousands. However, this was not the most important part. What was even more important was that the polar bear was an ice attribute mutant beast, and Wuxia needed ice attribute spiritual energy. At the very least, he could adapt in advance to prepare for the absorption of the ice attribute spirit stone mine that he would be collecting very soon. At this moment, if one were to look at Wuxia's tree body, he or she would definitely see a cold aura slowly climbing up his trunk from the deep earth where Wuxia's roots were buried. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the blazing flames on Wuxia's tree body were completely extinguished, and a thin layer of ice crystals had formed. From a distance, Wuxia's tree body looked like a tree of ice. However, these ice crystals were different from the divine ability crystallization. The crystals due to the earth attribute divine ability were as bright as diamond, but the current Wuxia was more like the condensation of cold ice. Dense cold mist could be seen rising from them. Even the surrounding ground was covered in a layer of frost. "Master, did you switch to the ice element?" A faint voice rang in Wuxia's ears. Looking towards the voice, Wuxia saw Nine Tails gazing at him with a deep sense of resentment. Ah! Wuxia's expression froze slightly before realization dawned upon him. Nine Tails was a fire attribute mutant beast, and now that he had transformed into a tree of ice, Nine Tails naturally could not comfortably reside on his canopy. After all, fire attribute mutant beasts had a natural aversion to cold. Heaving a sigh, Wuxia began to channel his fire attribute spiritual energy. After a while, to the astonishment of Nine Tails, half of Wuxia's body started to turn red, and was burning with intense flames soon after. Before Nine Tails could say anything, Wuxia's voice, tinged with a playful tone, rang, "Come up." "Okay, master." Without a moment of hesitation, Nine Tails quickly leaped onto one of the branches where Wuxia's flames were burning. Then it picked a comfortable posture and lay down. "Master, are you okay with being half burning and half frozen like this?" Hearing Nine Tails' somewhat worried voice, Wuxia chuckled. "What's the problem?" Wuxia continued, reflecting on the matter. "This is also good. It allows me to train my control over my fire and ice attribute spiritual energy." Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 273, Snowstorm. The intertwining of ice and fire presented a spectacular world of fire and ice. Looking from a distance, half of Wuxia's body was ablaze with raging flames, while the other half was covered in ice crystals that alternated between shattering and condensing. One half hot and one half cold, it was simply extraordinary. At this moment, Wuxia paid no attention to this and instead turned his gaze to the Nine Tails, which was already lying on a branch at his canopy, and asked, "How's that spirit stone mine?" "If I have to guess, it should be a medium-sized spirit stone mine." Replying, Nine Tails gestured with her paws and added, exaggerating, "The entire island is filled with spirit stone mines. At a glance, it looks like it's made of ice. Right now, White Snake and Old Ninth have already made their nests there and are tirelessly cultivating. It seems that our ice attribute companions are in luck this time." Wuxia smiled, satisfied. A medium-sized ice attribute spirit stone mine could not be taken lightly. For instance, the medium-sized earth attribute spirit stone mine from before had given birth to powerful earth attribute individuals in succession. The same was true for the current small-sized fire attribute spirit stone mine. Creatures like Nine Tails, Brewmaster, and even Inferno birds had all gained a significant increase in their strength thanks to this fire attribute spirit stone mine, some even becoming the pinnacle existences of the Misty Mountains. And now, with the addition of an ice attribute spirit stone mine, one could easily foresee the successive rise of various ice attribute mutant beasts. Unfortunately, there were not many ice attribute mutant beasts in the Misty Mountains at the moment. "I guess I need to make a trip to the snow plains to tame and train some ice attribute mutant beasts." Thinking about this, Wuxia also contemplated the idea of relocating his base. Of course, the most important thing right now was to deal with the Tier 2 transcendent polar bear that Wuxia had pulled closer to his tree body. He slowly raised his gaze and saw a figure on the verge of collapse. It was heavily wounded, and became even weaker due to Wuxia's extraction of spiritual energy. It could not even open its eyes. The only signs of it being alive was its rising and falling chest. "Do you want to follow me?" Wuxia softly asked, but it seemed to cross the distance and echoed in the heart of the polar bear. Ruhar. A roar, filled with anger and a touch of sadness reverberated through the forest. However, the sense of determination in that roar made Yuziyu narrow his eyes slightly. In his mind, he saw a terrifying figure standing at the top of an iceberg, stirring up a blizzard, desperately roaring at him. Ite? A Yuziyu sighed with a hint of helplessness. A Tier 2 mutant beast was different from a Tier 1. Tier 2 mutant beasts had developed their own consciousness. They also had their own pride. Furthermore, it was a polar bear. Polar bears, also known as white bears, may appear cute, but they lived in extremely harsh cold environments of the Arctic. Given this, their temperament could be easily imagined. Tough, unyielding. So, no matter what, it was not easy to make this Tier 2 polar bear submit. Just like now, under Yuziyu's mental pressure, the hint of determination under the quivering eyelids of the polar bear already spoke volumes. Obviously, suicide had crossed his mind. What a pity. Yuziyu heaved a slight sigh after noticing this. Then, the tree roots entwined around the polar bear suddenly tightened. Squish! Sounds akin to tearing of fabric rang as the polar bear's flesh became all mangled. At the same time, a terrifying suction force emanated from Yuziyu's tree roots. Ruhar. Like a beast in despair, it let out its final mournful cry. But within this cry, there was a faint sense of relief. Perhaps, for such a strong creature, death was not a bad choice either. Yuziyu sighed in his heart but increased the speed of extracting spiritual energy once again. However, immediately afterward, a cold, synthetic, electronic voice suddenly rang in Yuziyu's ear. Ding, you have killed a Tier 2 transcendent polar bear, evolution points plus 240,000. Listening to this clear notification, Yuziyu could not exactly be called joyful. The death of a Tier 2 mutant beast left him feeling somewhat desolate. After all, becoming a transcendent was not easy. Becoming a Tier 2 transcendent was even more so. Although he had no idea what kind of tribulations this polar bear had gone through, looking at its battered body and the glimmer of relief in its eyes, Yuziyu could understand a little. At that moment, another cold notification sound suddenly rang in Yuziyu's ear. Ding, you have successfully plundered the ability of the Tier 2 transcendent polar bear by devouring it. Just as the notification dropped, Yuziyu felt an extremely chilling sensation spreading from the roots. Successfully plundered? Yuziyu in a slightly puzzled voice, a bit confused. However, after a moment, a look of realization crossed his face, as if he had remembered something. He had almost forgotten that his roots had a very low probability of plundering abilities while devouring prey. However, the probability was so low, incredibly low, that even after Yuziyu devoured so many prey, even someone as strong silver-haired generally, he had failed to successfully plunder an ability. And now, unexpectedly, he had successfully plundered an ability. It was indeed a pleasant surprise. With this in mind, a faint smile appeared on Yuziyu's lips before he turned his gaze to the status screen. After a moment, a dense line of text appeared in his sight. Unique ability, Snowstorm, Level 1, you can manipulate wind and snow and wind your own power, thus affecting weather around you, creating an intense and harsh winter. When a howling wind carries snowflakes pouring down, there is only one possibility, it will strike again. An ability to control the weather? A murmur escaped Yuziyu's lips, somewhat surprised. He had not expected that the Tier 2 extraordinary polar bear would bring him such an ability. After all, an ability to control weather was relatively rare. Just like his mist manipulation, it was also a type of weather manipulation ability. This type of ability was not about power. After all, in terms of power, Yuziyu's advent of the tree world, and the recently acquired divine ability Feather Firestorm, could easily overpower it. However, the ability to control the weather possesses a characteristic that most other abilities, even divine abilities, lacked. That it was long and lasting. In other words, as long as Yuziyu wishes, he can make a specific area experience years of unending snowstorms. Just like the dense fog currently shrouding the misty mountains, as long as Yuziyu did not want it to dissipate, that area will remain cloaked in perpetual mist. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 274, The Great Monk. Yuziyu was quite satisfied with this ability, the snowstorm. It really came as a pleasant surprise. Moreover, the more abilities he possessed, the better. If he could develop more weather manipulation abilities, he could recreate various seasons in his territory, which would be beneficial for the survival of mutant beasts. By then, Yuziyu would be controlling a region, and with the ability to control weather, even founding his own country would not be too difficult. Just like now, Yuziyu already had plans to unleash his ability Snowstorm in an area north of the Misty Mountains. As time passed, this area would become suitable for ice-attribute mutant beasts to thrive. Of course, it was just a thought. Currently, Snowstorm still needed some development. Yuziyu planned to master it to a certain extent and then use evolution points to strengthen it, ensuring that it could keep pace with his current growth. With this in mind, Yuziyu's gaze turned to a row in the status screen that showed his evolution points. 320,000 evolution points. Yuziyu heaved a light sigh, feeling a bit frustrated. The number of evolution points he had was not small, but it was not a large number either. At least it was far from enough to upgrade his roots. He took a glance at the evolution points needed to strengthen the 9 secondary roots, and he could not help but feel a little overwhelmed. Upgrading just one secondary root required 300,000 evolution points, so upgrading all 9 secondary roots would require 7 million evolution points. This did not even take into account the primary root, which was like a tree dragon constantly moving into the depths of the earth. Upgrading it would likely require a considerable number of evolution points. However, the silver lining was that when he had completely upgraded his secondary roots and primary root, Yuziyu would be ready to prepare for a breakthrough to Tier 4. After all, at that time, Yuziyu's spiritual energy would have reached at least 8 to 9 million, just one step away from the threshold of 10 million. In the coming days, I should make a trip to the northern region. Mumbling to himself, Yuziyu drew a plan in his mind. The northern region was almost devoid of human presence and had long become a paradise for mutant beasts. The outer area was an expansive snow plain. Even with the speed of powerful mutant beasts like Bull Demon, it took him half a month to traverse the entire snow plain. So, basically to cross the entire Russia. This gave a sense of the vastness of the snow plain. And within the northern region's interior, there was a need to cross a cold and icy sea to reach the land of extreme ice. North Polar Ice Cap. In that region, there should be mutant beasts that even Yuziyu would have to be cautious of. After all, according to human accounts, ever since the era of transcendence began, the entire Arctic Circle had been veiled in a mysterious shroud. Moreover, cold winds have been ceaselessly blowing, extending their reach further inland. If one were to say that there were no formidable mutant beasts in the Arctic Circle, no experts would believe it. Some experts even claimed that the cold air blowing inland was the breath of some terrifying existence. While this statement might be a bit exaggerated, it indicated the fear that humans had for the Arctic Circle. It was no less terrifying than the depths of the ocean and various forbidden zones. In the outskirts of such sparsely populated areas, if Yuziyu were to appear and slaughter all the mutant beasts, there would be few people who would notice. However, the only thing to be cautious about is whether Russia, known as the Warrior Nation, had been monitoring the Arctic Circle all the while. But after giving it a thought, Yuziyu realized that it was highly unlikely. After all, even the vast Russia had to huddle in a corner due to its proximity to the Arctic Circle. Until now, there were hardly any humans surviving in the entire Siberia, which was once known as the Far East, before the era of transcendence. It was rumored that before the era of transcendence arrived, the most baffled people were the Russians. Due to the abrupt arrival of a terrifying cold current in the northern region, many people froze to death. Consequently, public resentment surged, pushing the entire region of Russia to the brink of collapse. Fortunately, they managed to stabilize the situation in the end. Still, even if they managed to stabilize in the end, Russia had no strength to manage its vast territory, much less expand its influence like China. As these thoughts crossed Yuziyu's mind, a faint smile tugged the corners of his lips. If it were not for the massive earthquake he caused, China would probably have been much stronger now. Unfortunately, they just had to mess with him. Though the earthquake he triggered on the dark day did not harm many people in China, it shook numerous cities and provided an opportunity for waves of mutant beasts to breach. According to the news from Qing Air, the entire China was severely damaged by the earthquake caused by Yuziyu, with over a dozen cities becoming ghost towns, and many cities losing half of their population. Only a few metropolises at the border regions were less affected. Most of the other cities were more or less damaged. As long as China harbors enmity against me, we still have a game to play. With a cold smile, Yuziyu looked toward the south with interest. There, he estimated that many people were still plotting against him. At that moment, unbeknownst to Yuziyu, in a remote border region of China. Boom boom boom. Deep within the earth, terrifying tremors were surging. What was incredible was that the surface of the earth remained completely calm, as if nothing was happening. Shicheng was one of the most remote small cities located on the border of China and closest to the ASEAN countries. Outside the tall, defensive walls of this city, two groups were slowly approaching. One was the delegation of China, led by the second disciple of General Li, one of the twin titans of China who had gone missing. The other was the delegation of Alliance of Southeast Asian nations. Regretfully, ASEAN was unable to match the strength of China. They had lost their most effective communication methods when the era of transcendence began. Now, the ASEAN nations relied on the technology and weapons left over from the previous era and their superhumans to barely survive in the cracks between the strong. They had even lost many of their basic communication methods. It could be said that the current ASEAN was almost in a state of isolation. Without the ability to launch satellites, they found it challenging to establish satellite communication. Without satellite communication, all communication methods relying on magnetic fields were infeasible in today's world. Now, this delegation was composed of superhumans who raced through various countries and put together this delegation. However, such ASEAN also had benefits. That was the unexpected power of the country's superhumans. At a glance, 70 to 80 men and women of the delegation exuded the aura of high-level experts. Moreover, among them several people were exuding an oppressive aura. They were the superhumans, but they were not just ordinary superhumans. Among them was an elderly man who looked like an old monk in meditation. His shut eyes and dull deep yellow skin made him look like he was on the verge of death. However, despite his appearance, no one dared to approach him. He was Pashu, one of the elders of the Buddhist religion. Buddhism was one of the most powerful religions within the ASEAN nations. Its influence extended across the north and south, and it boasted numerous experts. Some rumors even pointed at them to be the reason behind the formation of alliance between the ASEAN nations. However, that was not the most important aspect. The most significant factor was that Buddhism was truly strong. All of its elders were superhumans. Rumor had it that there were no less than 100 of these Buddhist elders, and nobody knew how they had all come into being. Even when Ling Er was investigating this exceedingly mysterious religion, she found it rather unbelievable. A religious group had as many experts as an entire large nation. Furthermore, she sensed that behind this religion, there were several individuals who were no less powerful than her. And what level was Ling Er currently at? She was a solid tier 2 superhuman, and she was one of the most powerful beings within the entire China. But a religious group having such individuals behind it? It was truly inconceivable. Unbelievably inconceivable. Ashish, while we may have used a religion's name, this is just a fictional thing, and used the name just to relate to the real world. If anyone's feelings are harmed, or will be harmed, we apologize in advance. Once again, this is just a fictional setting. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 275, Quicksand. Apart from the well-known killer monk, Pashu, there was another person who was eye-catching, a young girl with an impressive figure and a purple veil covering her face. Unlike the rough skin that some Chinese believe citizens of ASEAN nations have, her complexion resembled healthy wheat and appeared smooth and delicate from a distance. What was even more astonishing were her glistening eyes revealed beneath the purple veil. They were as deep and profound as sapphire. A single glance had the power to draw one's gaze towards her eyes, sending an electric current through their core. She was one of 3 most famous nuns of Buddhism, Aisha. It was worth mentioning that the status of nuns in Buddhism had drastically changed after the advent of the era of transcendence. They were widely accepted, unlike before. Rumor had it that Buddhism underwent a great change at the beginning of the era of transcendence, and one of the most astonishing changes was the status of nuns. They were no longer the despised women but held a revered position, even demanding the same level of respect as the monks, who were considered highly esteemed figures. Even monks of lower status were required to bow to them. This time, a renowned superhuman from Alliance of Southeast Asian nations had come to protect Aisha, a nun. Pashu, is China as terrifying as the rumors say? Aisha asked in a soft and gentle voice as she looked toward the towering black city walls in the distance. Yes. The reticent Pashu, nodding his agreement, heaved a sigh and continued, looking at the distant tall walls. Our elders were a step too late, and allowed China to gain the upper hand before us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had to unite with numerous small countries to secure a place in this era of transcendence. In his low voice, there was a hint of helplessness. A step late, and it made them late at every step. By the time their leaders fully took control of the entire Buddhism, the era of transcendence had already arrived. By then, the beasts were invading and the entire world was undergoing a cataclysm. After a series of events, even the various leaders of Buddhist monasteries could only watch as the entire nation crumbled into pieces. However, they still found a glimmer of hope. Under the guidance of various leaders of monasteries, Buddhism was showing signs of recovery and resurgence. More importantly, the spiritual energy was rising again and superhumans were reappearing. The powers that were only heard in legends were now manifesting in the hands of leaders of Buddhism. For a moment, the various schools of Buddhism stood united and determined. As such, Pashu believed that Buddhism would eventually rise to the pinnacle of this world. Just then, as if sensing something, Pashu's eyelids trembled slightly. After a moment, his quivering eyelids slowly opened. At the same time, a formidable gaze looked toward the lower part of the towering city walls in the distance. There, a cloud of dust was rising in the air. A black caravan happened to be racing toward them. "They're here, huh?" Pashu murmured softly as he stepped forward barefoot. The next moment, "Buddhist monastics killer monk, Pashu, respectfully awaits your arrival." Pashu's deep voice surged toward the distance, penetrating through the clouds of dust. "So it's the monk Pashu. I've heard about you for a long time," a light and refreshing voice as a gentle breeze came from a distance. The voice belonged to none other than Li Yuan who, the second disciple of one of the twin titans of China, and the one who Ling Er was wary about. Despite his limited strength only at Tier 1, his methods were truly unsettling. This time he was the spokesperson of the Chinese delegation. Boom, boom, boom. As the caravan approached, the two groups were only a kilometer apart. At this point, the transcendence of two groups could clearly see each other's faces. However, they failed to perceive something else. A massive and statue-like figure had been sitting in the depths of the earth for quite some time. "They're here." Sensing the vibrations from the surface of the earth, Qin Gang could not help but sneer. As an earth elemental life form, Qin Gang held an immense geographical advantage. When hidden in the depths of the earth, no one could notice him. More importantly, a massive black tide of mutant black rats was surging from all directions. In the depths of the earth, mutant black rat were like fish in the water. They were naturally well suited for underground terrain. And under the protection of Qin Gang, the earth elemental life form known as the Earth, these mutant black rats had become even more formidable. If one could look through the surface and look at the ground from above, he or she would see that the ground within a radius of a kilometer had been hollowed out as though by some kind of excavation. Almost there. Sensing the increasingly violent tremors from the surface, Qin Gang heaved a long, deep breath. After a moment, his gaze turned toward a nearby mutant black rat that was shrouded in black mist. It was none other than Shady, the rat emperor of the mutant rat horde, a fearsome transcendent who was the most powerful ally of Qin Gang at this moment. After all, there were plenty of superhumans among these two delegations. There were at least 8 superhumans that Qin Gang detected, excluding superhumans who could conceal their aura. By a rough estimation, there should be more than 10 superhumans in total. Against so many superhumans, even Qin Gang would find himself in a spot. Fortunately, Qin Gang had the support of tens of thousands of rats. Thinking of this, Qin Gang nodded slightly at the rat emperor. As if sensing Qin Gang's intention, the rat emperor suddenly emitted a sharp screech. Squeak, squeak, the piercing screech echoed through the underground. Right at the same time, the horde of countless mutant black rats responded in unison, screeching. Squeak, squeak, squeak. For a while, the underground region was echoing with terrifying screeches. Just then, on the surface of the earth, Killer Monk, Pashu and the nun wearing the purple veil suddenly had a drastic change in their expressions, as if they had sensed something horrifying. Not only them but the caravan not far from them also came to an abrupt halt, as if they had also sensed something. But before they could react. Sink them. Quicksand, with a roar, Qin Gang, hidden deep underground, slapped the ground with a hand. Subsequently, a dense yellowish-brown spiritual energy permeated the earth's surface from Qin Gang's hand. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, the surrounding ground, centered on Qin Gang, rapidly transformed into fine sand. What was even more horrifying was that this sand actually began to sink fiercely due to the fact that the underground region had been hollowed out by countless mutant rats. Boom, boom, boom. The earth trembled and shook and everything began to collapse into the crater. The center of a 1,000-kilometer radius ground resembled a massive abyss, swallowing both delegations in an instant. Although some of the superhumans reacted promptly and took to the air, they were all shocked to witness the land sinking continuously for 1,000 kilometers around them. What's happening? Crying in a voice filled with disbelief, Killer Monk Pashu looked at the caravan not far away and noticed that several people from the caravan had taken to the air, completely pale. It's not their doing. At the sight of their aghast faces, Pashu was taken aback. However, it was not the time to mull over who was behind this, as even though they could move through the air, they could not heap across hundreds of meters and escape from this ever-sinking chasm. As a result, what awaited them was inevitably the devouring from this unknown source. Ashish. Bhikkhunis are female monastics in Buddhism who play a significant role in the religion. They are sometimes referred to as nuns. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 276, Hiding, Killing, Intent and Ambush. However, just at this moment, squeak, squeak, squeak. A cacophony of sharp squeaks suddenly erupted from the sinking earth. What's that? Gawking with widened eyes, the members of the ASEAN delegation turned pale at the sight of black waves surging up from the sinking ground. However, just at this moment, these black waves suddenly changed direction and surged toward them as if walking on the ground. Then, sharp white claws gleaming with cold light, and razor-sharp teeth that could tear everything apart, entered their sight, accompanied by sharp squeaks piercing their eardrums. It's a mutant rat tide. A mutant rat tide. A monk of no lesser standing than Killer Monk Pashu cried in despair as his face went pale. But before he could say anything more, the fearsome rat tide completely drowned him. Then a heart-rending scream suddenly stopped as tattered, blood-stained pieces of clothing, the only remains of the monk, came into view for countless onlookers. Is this for real? Are you kidding me? Voices of disbelief and even horror filled the air as those who failed to take to the air sank with the earth, expressions of despair on their faces at the sight of this horrific scene. From their perspective, the advancing black tide resembled a relentless flood repeatedly assaulting them. No, no! Screaming, a Chinese young man erupted with spiritual energy as he rushed toward the outside area like a madman. However, every time his foot landed, it had no support and he found himself slipping even faster. Right at that very moment, an excruciating pain suddenly shot from his thigh. When the young man looked toward the source, much to his terror, he found a large black rat with crimson eyes had bitten viciously into his thigh. Die! Roaring, the young man channeled his spiritual energy, and fiercely whipped his leg to fling away the mutant black rat. Just then a searing pain surged. Looking up, he found that his right leg was bleeding profusely, and it was missing a large chunk of flesh. This was a rat tide. One of the most feared tides of beasts by the humans. The reason being that the rat tide was not only terrifying in numbers, but because these mutant rats behaved as if they had no regard for their own lives, frenziedly devouring everything in their path. They were like the starving gluttons, leaving devastation wherever they went. They did not just eat what could be eaten, even buildings disappeared without a trace because of them. This was why the rat tide was one of the most horrifying tides of beasts. Except, this black rat tide that had suddenly emerged from the earth was not as horrifying as rumored. However, the problem came in their numbers. For the humans, there were only 100 people in their group. Even more terrifying was the fact that no one could tell why the ground kept sinking. Because the continuously sinking land, which seemed to have turned completely into fine sand, had brought both delegations to the brink of desperation. At this point, even escaping seemed impossible, let alone resisting. Yet just at this moment, die! A furious roar filled with murderous intent reverberated through the sky. The next moment, everyone saw Pashu treading on the quicksand, as if he was on solid ground, charging into the depths of the black rat tide on his own. He raised hand as a faint spiritual energy enveloped his arm before he fiercely swung his arm down, sending forth a wind wolf several meters high. Squeak, squeak. Accompanied by sharp, mournful squeaks of mutant black rat, the nauseating scent of blood filled the air. On another side, a middle-aged man with a long sword revealed a fierce expression before fiercely swinging his sword toward the mutant rat tide. Swoosh, accompanied by the sound of something cutting through the air, a several-meter-long white sword chi instantly slashed through the rat tide. Squeak, squeak, another cacophony of mournful cries filled the air as several mutant black rat were cleaved in half, their lives extinguished. Meanwhile, in the deepest part of the sinking sand. As expected, there are powerful people among the humans. Noticing the changes on the battlefield, Qin Gang's face darkened. While he did not pin his hopes on his ultimate move, quicksand to wipe out both the delegation, it was going worse than he had expected. A concerned look flashed on his face once he sensed the sudden and powerful fluctuations. While he could handle 1, 2 or 3 would put him in a tight spot. Yet now, 10 transcendent-level fluctuations erupted across the battlefield, and 3 of them posed a mild threat to him. What did it imply? The humans never lacked strong individuals. While there were no godlike figures as almighty as his master, Wuxia, there were experts as strong as Qin Gang himself. Now, 3 such powerful experts had emerged at once. One was a skinny and withered monk in a deep red robe. Another was a middle-aged man in a green shirt, wielding a long sword. Faintly, Qin Gang saw a faint resemblance to General Li, the silver-haired middle-aged man in him. Just like General Li, this middle-aged man was wielding a sword, wearing a green shirt, and his features seemed vaguely familiar. He was General Li's second disciple, his only direct disciple on the surface. Apart from them, there was a tall young woman wearing a purple veil. With graceful steps, she was moving like a black mamba snake, her stunning figure twisting left and right in an enchanting manner. She was like a rose, a beautiful flower with thorns. Her every move was deadly. In just a few breaths she had taken the lives of dozens of mutant black rats. Squeak, squeak, as if suppressing something, an extremely agitated and terrifying squeak rang from the depths of the vortex of quicksand. Looking up, Qin Gang noticed that the eyes of the Rat Emperor, concealed within the black mist, were bloodshot. His kin were being ruthlessly slaughtered, so how could he not be angry? If it were not for Qin Gang's warning, he would have already attacked. Wait, wait, Qin Gang appeased in a soft voice, while a trace of coldness flickered in his eyes when he looked at the group on the battlefield. He explained to Shady, "Our master says we can't reveal our identities, so if these people discover us, they must die. Do you understand?" Qin Gang's cold voice filled with murderous intent caused Shady to be bewildered for a moment, but he soon responded with excitement. Squeak, squeak, his terrifying squeak seemed to say, "Kill, kill, kill." Great. Nodding slightly, Qin Gang exhaled a long breath in relief. Then he shifted his gaze toward the battlefield. The middle-aged man in the green shirt is your target. You'll infiltrate the rat tide and strike when their most guard is at its lowest, and deliver a lethal blow. Instructing this, Qin Gang cautioned him again, "Remember, these strong individuals are formidable. You only have one chance. If you fail, we'll face a tough fight and more of our kin will die because of them." Squeak, squeak, Shady let out a few more squeaks in response, indicating his understanding. At this moment, Qin Gang also looked at the monk in the deep red robe. Among all those present, he was the most fearsome and exuded the strongest killing intent. Such a formidable individual, if not eliminated, would undoubtedly cause heavy losses for Qin Gang and Shady. This was something Qin Gang could not tolerate. Since he had borrowed the rat tide from Lung Feng, he intended to bring them back in good condition. While he could not bring all of them back, he planned on losing no more than 10 to 20%, that was the extent of his tolerance. Otherwise he would not be able to face Lung Feng, let alone his master. With this in mind, Qin Gang's figure gradually merged into the earth. Faintly, a hidden and fearsome killing intent closed in on the monk. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 277, Fearsome Sneak Attack and Terror of Elementalization. Kill, kill, kill. Amidst low and resonant shouts, Monk Pashu's killing intent became increasingly terrifying. He cultivated the path of killing, which emphasized on killing to stop killing. According to the Buddhist leaders, the more precise way to describe his path was the path of the Asura, a terrifying path of taking lives. If he could master it, he would become an Asura. Thus, Pashu's murderous intent was different from ordinary people. It was more icy and ruthless. As his killing intent became more and more horrifying, his combat power visibly increased at a rapid pace. However, just at that moment, the sinking quicksand suddenly shook. At the same time, Pashu sensed a deadly threat coming from under his feet. Without a moment's hesitation, Pashu leaped into the air and smacked his palm fiercely toward the sand. *Bam! Star. His majestic spiritual energy caused the sand to sink deeper as a fearsome wave of sand surged outward. However, the next moment, much to Pashu's astonishment, a pillar of sand abruptly rose and transformed into a giant hand dozens of meters long, grabbing at him. What's going on? Pashu's expression underwent a dramatic change, which was really rare, as he sent a fierce palm strike toward the hand of sand. With a deafening clap, the palm strike shattered the giant hand of sand, causing the entire sand pit to shake violently and generating a terrifying gale that kicked off a billowing cloud of sand. However, just then, a cold laugh suddenly echoed in the air. "You're pretty good." The laugh was cold enough to freeze one's heart. At the same time, to Pashu's disbelief, a humanoid silhouette emerged from the cloud of sand, its arms swiftly transforming into a blade. Squish! The next moment, accompanied by a crisp cutting sound, the blade of sand sliced across Pashu's neck. Spurt! As a jet of blood squirted out of his neck, Pashu staggered and fell, clutching his neck. Not long after, he was engulfed by the quicksand and even the tide of mutant rats. During the entire process he had not uttered a single cry. It was not because he did not want to but because he did not have the chance. In the face of Qin Gang's terrifying ambush in his elemental form, Pashu had done the best he could. On the other side, Nun Aisha and Li Yuan, who seemed to have also noticed the sudden disappearance of Pashu's aura, which caused their expression to change drastically. They promptly looked in the direction of Pashu's vanished aura, and much to their horror, saw a figure transform into countless flying sand particles and gradually disappear. The gradually disappearing upper half of the unfamiliar figure wore a faint smirk at the corner of his mouth, seemingly mercilessly mocking them. "Who's that?" Li Yuan, who, holding a long sword, shot a sharp gaze in the direction where Qin Gang had disappeared. He seemed to be searching for the figure vigilantly. However, at that moment, Li Yuan, who failed to notice the presence of an exquisitely sleek black rat in the tide of mutant rats advancing behind him. Its black fur was as smooth as silk and its eyes sparkled like rubies. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Hearing the cacophony of squeaks all around him, a hint of annoyance appeared on Li Yuanhu's face. "An unknown and terrifying presence is lurking around us, and these darn rats are coming at us as if they have gone mad. Die, die, you freaking bastards." Feeling a sudden chill in his heart, Li Yuanhu quickly raised his sword and unleashed a flurry of sword attacks toward the black rat tide. But just at that very moment, squeak, 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 suddenly strange squeaks rang in Li Yuanhu's ears. However, what sent a chill down Li Yuanhu's spine even more was the sudden sense of fatal danger overwhelming his senses. Instinctively he raised his sword to block. Asterisk crack. Asterisk accompanied by a sharp, crisp breaking sound, a snow-white gleaming claw snapped his sword in half and continued its attack toward his chest. "You're courting death." He roared like thunder, gazing at the transcendent mutant black rat that was charging at him. A hint of amazement briefly flashed across Li Yuanhu's face, but it was overwhelmed by boundless anger. With a thunderous boom, a burst of spiritual energy suddenly erupted from him, pushing back Shady. At the same time, Li Yuanhu threw away his sword and fiercely attacked Shady with his palm. But much to his surprise, he noticed a trace of mockery deep in the eyes of this transcendent rat. "Shit!" Li Yuanhu's expression drastically took a turn for the worse, as if he had thought of something. Nonetheless, before he could react, a severe bout of pain shot from his back. He slowly lowered his head and saw a sand knife piercing through his chest. And right at that very moment, another swoosh rang in his ears as Shady's sharp claws instantly swept across Li Yuanhu's heart. Even until death he found the entire thing hard to believe, but no one would explain it to him. Simply because, at that moment, Qin Gang slowly turned around and silently gazed at the battlefield. "Not a single one is to be spared." His ice-cold voice sent the entire mutant rat tide into a frenzy, making them even more terrifying as if they were injected with adrenaline. Shortly thereafter, the gazes of Qin Gang and Shady finally turned to the last powerful girl. Her face was hidden behind a purple veil, but deep, sapphire-like eyes were filled with confusion and disbelief. Although she was strong, she could not compare to Pashu and the middle-aged man with the longsword. But now, those two top experts have fallen one after the other. This, with a look of disbelief blanketing her face, this exotic and beautiful girl also turned pale. But not long after, a deep voice suddenly reverberated through the air. "Elemental Commander under the Divine Tree of the Misty Mountains, Qin Gang invites you to Misty Mountains." As Qin Gang's commanding voice did not allow any refusal rang, the battlefield regained calm, and even the dust had settled. Furthermore, countless icy-cold gazes slowly focused on the girl in the center of the battlefield. It was spine-chilling. The only thing the girl could do was murmur helplessly, "Misty Mountains? Divine Tree?" With a hint of incredulity, the girl stood rooted to the spot, fallen into a prolonged silence. She had no idea about the Misty Mountains, even less so the Divine Tree. However, there was no one to explain it to her. All there were two exceedingly mysterious beings, accompanied by a horde of terrifying rats, approaching her without resistance. She did not dare to resist, and she was powerless to do so as well. The only thing she could do was stand rooted to the spot, helpless, and sink into the depths of the earth along with the black tide. Eventually, her head sank and she fell unconscious. Shortly thereafter, the large crater that had sunken dozens of meters deep was surrounded by a fully armed military battalion. Fan out and search. Find out where have all the people gone. If you can't find them, don't bother coming back. Amid the frantic shouts, the local military force of Shurching was thrown into chaos. Everyone knew that something big had happened. The entire delegation of both Alliance of Southeast Asian nations and China had disappeared, almost under their noses, and it was even possible that all of them had been wiped out. An event of such magnitude would shake not only Shurching but even the higher echelons of the Chinese government. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 278, Blood Red Brand. The misty mountains still shrouded in a veil of dense mist as ever. However, deep within the earth, continuous tremors could be felt coming from a distance. Back already? As if sensing something, Wuxia, rooted at the peak of the Himalayan mountains, slightly raised the corner of his lips as he turned his gaze toward the south of the misty mountains. After a moment, what came into his view was a wave of soil surging toward him. Along with it was a figure resembling a sculpture, slowly emerging from the ground. In his hand, he carried what seemed like a fragile yet very tall figure. Huh? Squinting his eyes, Wuxia looked at the girl in the arms of Qin Gang. She had a purple veil covering her face, and she seemed to be in a state of unconsciousness. At this moment, as if sensing Wuxia's scrutinizing gaze, Qin Gang went down on his one knee, respectfully reported, "Master, this Qin Gang has successfully completed the mission." Then he placed the girl he was carrying into the large hand formed by several branches extended by Wuxia. She is part of the ASEAN delegation and possesses terrifying talents. Her name seems to be Aisha, one of the three great nuns of Buddhism of the Alliance of Southeast Asian Nations. Recalling information about the girl, Qin Gang proceeded to recount it word for word. Buddhism and one of the three great nuns? Wuxia was slightly taken aback by Qin Gang's recount. A tinge of surprise flashed in his eyes as he looked at the unconscious girl. He was not unfamiliar with Buddhism. It was the official religion of a great nation within the Alliance of Southeast Asian Nations, and was already quite influential even before the arrival of the era of transcendence. According to the information conveyed by Qing Er, Buddhism seemed to have undergone significant changes since the rise of spiritual energy. It was now extremely mysterious, especially the leaders sitting at the highest position in Buddhism. So much so that even the higher-ups of the Chinese government held some fear toward it. Yet now, the highest-ranking great nun of such a large religion was captured by Qin Gang. Good job. Smiling, Wuxia felt a bit satisfied. When it came to human prodigies, this great nun would certainly have a place among them. After all, even when in a state of unconsciousness, the terrifying fluctuations of spiritual energy emanating from her body were a constant reminder of how extraordinary her talents were. Of course, her talents paled compared to Qing Er and Nine Tails. One reason was that the speed of human cultivation was naturally slower. The second reason was that Qing Er and Nine Tails had access to abundant resources provided by Wuxia. It could be said that the steady growth of Qing Er and Nine Tails was based on the increasingly terrifying foundation of Misty Mountains. However, that was not the main point. The key point was that this human prodigy could be a very good test subject. Furthermore, she was quite an exotic beauty. Although Wuxia did not care much for one's appearances, he found her quite pleasing to the eye at first glance. With a gentle wave of his branches, he lifted the purple veil covering the girl's face, revealing a very delicate countenance. She was truly beautiful. Her sleek and sharp face accentuated her well-defined features. Her dark brown thick eyebrows and jet black eyes were like black holes, forcibly drawing all the touching light toward them. Her delicate and smooth vermilion lips were hot enough to make people hesitate to approach. As for her pure and delicate skin, if one looked closely for a few minutes, he or she might even detect a strange and intoxicating fragrance. As for her lower body, her graceful neck, delicate collarbones, and the alluring curves, with the thin veil draped over them. She looked more like a mature woman rather than a pure, innocent young girl. She is really an exotic beauty. Smiling, Wuxia's eyes twinkled slightly. No wonder she is wearing a purple veil. Without it, she might have caused a sensation through the entire nation. Unfortunately. As if he had thought of something, Yuziyu shook his head helplessly. At the end of the day, he was a tree. He could not have any other thoughts. What he could do now was to sign a blood covenant with the girl while she was unconscious and then attempt to gain complete control over her, from her body to her mind. As these thoughts surged in his mind, Yuziyu's spiritual energy surged. Boom! The next moment, a terrifying rumble resounded as an inexplicable force began to surge. Immediately after, to Qin Gang's astonished gaze, a strand of blood-red energy rose from Yuziyu's tree body. This blood-red strand was very eerie and very much like blood, but it was as fine as a strand of hair. What was even more astonishing was that this strand of blood-red energy flowed along the air like it was flowing through veins, surging toward the unconscious girl. Ah! A nearly imperceptible moan escaped her lips as a deep furrow appeared on her brow. However, before Qin Gang could react, the hair-thin blood-red strand penetrated into the girl's glabella with a loud clap. At the same time, a complex yet ancient-looking pattern began to form continuously on the girl's glabella. At the same time, Yuziyu's mind shook slightly. Vaguely, he felt a faint connection being established between him and the girl. However, this connection was very faint. This feeling, Yuziyu murmured to himself, intrigued by this unusual sensation. After a while, his consciousness sank into the deepest part of his mind. The next moment he saw an endless expanse of darkness, like a space deep within his mind. In the depths of this space there was a complex blood-red brand. An inscription was being drawn in his mind. And with each stroke, the blood-red brand became increasingly intricate. Furthermore, with the passage of time, this complex brand began to exude an ancient and profound aura. A blood-red brand, proof of the covenant. Looking at this blood-red brand, a realization suddenly dawned upon Yuziyu. In his subconsciousness, a voice told him, this is the core of his control over the girl Aisha, this blood-red brand. Through this blood-red brand, he could easily perceive everything about Aisha and control her every aspect. If he wished, he could take everything from Aisha by shattering this blood-red brand. It was not just her body but her soul as well. This was the terrifying power of the ancient ability, Blood Covenant. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 279, The Horror of the Apostle. The Blood Covenant was like a legendary slave contract, but more terrifying. This ability belongs exclusively to the vampires. Yuziyu just obtained it by chance, which also helped this ancient ability to shine brightly in this world once again. He slowly raised his gaze, and a complex blood-red brand on the girl's forehead entered his sight. This girl was very beautiful. She already was an exotic beauty, and now with this flowing blood-red brand, she appeared even more mysterious. But at this moment, as if sensing Yuziyu's scrutinizing gaze, the girl's eyelids trembled slightly, as if she was about to wake up. Just at this time, along with Yuziyu's gaze, a series of information flooded into Yuziyu's mind. Race, mutant human. Rank, Tier 1 Transcendent. Innate talent, Death Stare, her eyes as deep as sapphires, possess a strange magical power. After gazing at someone for a prolonged period of time, she can easily perceive the weaknesses of a person or even a creature. Unique abilities, Dance of the Black Mamba, a highly profound combat technique named after the Black Mamba. It's like a dance of snakes, graceful and deadly. Healing. Assisted by gentle spiritual energy, she can heal some injuries and relieve some pain. Snake Walk. With a light, graceful and swift movement, she can retreat in an instant and attack in the next. Wild Bite. Her hand, like a snake's jaw, can launch an attack in an instant. Her attack can tear through the defenses of most creatures, even gouging out the flesh. Blood Covenant. After signing a blood covenant, the servant's heart and body belong entirely to the master. She is able to temporarily use part of the master's power and provide the master with evolution points through killing others. Yuziyu's pupils suddenly contracted, as if he had discovered something astonishing. His gaze was fixed on those few words, provide the master with evolution points. Is this real? A rare shock flashed through his mind, leaving him somewhat bewildered. Provide master with the evolution points? How is that possible? He knew that all his evolution points came when he killed someone with his own hands. Despite his reluctance, his hands were already stained with blood. Moreover, because of his need for evolution points, Yuziyu had to walk further and further down the path of slaughter. Yet now he saw something that left him shocked. The apostles who had signed the blood covenant could actually provide him, their master, with evolution points by killing others. In a state of confusion, a wild joy surged in Yu's heart. If this were true, the speed of his future growth would greatly accelerate. Thinking of this, Yu exhaled a long deep breath. Calmly suppressing the slight excitement in his heart, Yu's gaze was firmly fixed on the girl with the blood-red brand not far away. At this moment, the girl had woken up, gradually revealing a pair of eyes as deep as sapphires under her trembling eyelids. Clasping her hands together as if in prayer, Aisha looked at the towering divine tree not far away, her gaze filled with piety. Unlike others, as a Buddhist nun, Aisha seemed to be able to embody this role very well. Perhaps it was precisely because of her status as a great nun that Aisha had a deeper understanding of the word faith. And now, the divine tree bathing in ice and flames not far away was everything to her, like a true belief supporting her existence. In other words, Yu had become Aisha's true god of worship. Aisha. As Yu called out softly, his voice reverberated in Aisha's heart. Your most faithful servant is here. Aisha bowed once again, a trace of reverence in her eyes. And Yu slightly nodded. Looking at Aisha, who was showing sincere devotion without even a trace of pretension, Yu was very satisfied. Judging by this, there was no denying that the blood covenant was truly terrifying. Of course, it also had to do with Aisha's own identity. As one of the three great nuns of Buddhism, she was able to adapt to her role. For an ordinary person, even if they signed the blood covenant, they would not be as devout. I need you to do something. Saying this, Yu's gaze turned toward an ancient forest in the distance. Go bathe in blood. Yes, master. Nodding, Aisha gently kicked the ground. The next moment, her charming body twisted and turned like a snake as she disappeared from Yu's sight in an instant. Right at that moment, not far away. Gulp. Qin Gang gulped a mouthful of saliva in incredulity, watching Aisha's departing figure. Master didn't say or do anything. Yet he subdued this nun just like that? A look of bewilderment flashed across Qin Gang as he became even more puzzled. Why did this woman respect Master more than me? Wait, isn't this robbing me of my livelihood? Countless questions ran through his mind, leaving him at a total loss. The fact that his master, Yu, could subdue Aisha was not that strange to him. Even when Yu subdued Aisha silently, Qin Gang was just slightly shocked. However, the performance of this girl named Aisha just now gave Qin Gang a strange sense of crisis. That devoted gaze, that humble posture. Qin Gang could not pull it off. But at this moment, as if sensing Qin Gang's oddity, Yu's gaze also shifted. Master. In a hurry, Qin Gang also showed respect in his actions. You did well this time. In a soft voice of approval, Yu also acknowledged Qin Gang's ability to finish the task. Then, as if he had thought of something, Yu asked again, how is the construction of the underground city going? It's more than halfway done. At this point, an excited look blanketed Qin Gang's face as he added, thanks to your occupation of Maple Leaf City, we've obtained a large number of human resources, including cement, alloys. Because of these, our construction speed has greatly increased. Speed it up. Nodding, Yu expressed satisfaction. The last time he saw it, the entire underground city had already taken shape and had the semblance of a city. However, unlike human cities, Yu's constructed city had a unique design. Aside from the central area that featured a towering platform, which was like a temple holding his tree body high, the rest of the city was built with towering structures capable of accommodating mutant beasts, along with streets that were tens of meters wide. Yu's underground city wasn't just a copy of a human city, it was built for mutant beasts. Apart from beings like Titan, Tundra, and Sarcosuchus who were massive in size, Yu had also constructed residences for other mutant beasts with whom he could name. As for Titan, Tundra, and Sarcosuchus, they could reside in the underground river. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 280, Fire Elemental Lifeform. Shortly afterward, a crisp electronic synthesized rang in Yu's ear. Ding, your apostle has just killed a Tier 0 Level 6 mutant Grey Wolf, you gain plus 12 evolution points. Listening to this notification, Yu's eyes narrowed slightly. Evolution points plus 12? 1/5, huh? Not bad. Pondering, Yuziyu curled his lips and chuckled. Though a 1/5 rate of conversion was not as high as he had hoped, it was better than nothing. Moreover, for apostles like Aisha, Yuziyu had no intention of having her massacre mutant beasts. Alone, no matter how many she killed, the evolution points provided would be limited. Instead of doing so, Yuziyu planned to have Aisha return to the Alliance of Southeast Asian Nations under his banner, and continue her role as a nun for Buddhism. If possible, Yuziyu could also use her to initiate a war. Not a war between humans and beasts, but a war between humans themselves. Presumably, with the Alliance of Southeast Asian Nations acting as restraint, China would not be able to divert much of its resources to deal with a tree like him, which was rooted somewhere in the Misty Mountains. What was even more important was the number of evolution points a war could provide. Yuziyu did not know how many exactly, but he had a feeling it would be quite satisfying. After all, as if he remembered something, Yuziyu's gaze was drawn to the nearby canopy, where a luminous spirit flower as bright as the sun itself was burning with white flames. Elemental flower, fire, can transform creatures into fire elemental life form. Fire elemental life form was highly aggressive and had devastating power, far surpassing earth elemental life form. If an existence like this erupted on the battlefield of humans? Imagining such a scene, the corner of Yuziyu's lips curled slightly. In his mind, he also thought of an excellent fire element ultimate move, Meteor Firestorm. Flames falling from the sky like meteors, incinerating everything regardless of friend or foe. By then, even if the conversion rate of evolution points is only 1/5, it should still be quite a lot. Murmuring, a hint of excitement welled up inside Yuziyu. Obtaining evolution points just like that for nothing really came as a pleasant surprise. However, at that moment, as if he remembered something, Yuziyu's gaze returned to the description of Blood Covenant. After a moment, a voice full of helplessness sounded in the air. "It's as I expected." Yuziyu understood that the total number of blood covenants he could sign was limited. Each time a blood covenant was signed, it placed a pressure on his mind. Additionally, there were some risks associated with the signing of a blood covenant. For example, if an apostle was killed by psychic power, it may even trace back to the source and hurt Yuziyu. Of course, the probability of that happening was rather low. After all, there were very few entities skilled in psychic powers, and even fewer capable of tracing the source of the blood covenant. Nonetheless, there was one thing that was set in stone: the number of apostles was limited. One reason is that Yuziyu's mind could bear only that much burden. The second reason was that too many apostles would do more harm than good for Yuziyu. If they were captured by entities skilled in psychic powers, there was a high possibility of harming Yuziyu himself. Such a situation had to be guarded against. Which means that the selection of apostles must be prudent one, and they should have powerful combat abilities, be difficult to kill, and if necessary be able to actively shatter the blood covenant to protect me. Muttering to himself, Yuziyu made a decision. For now, Aisha would be the only apostle. As for the others, Yuziyu had no intention of nurturing them. The main purpose of choosing Aisha as an apostle was to disrupt the situation at China's border, not to harvest evolution points. That night, at the top of the Himalayan mountains, clouds and mist abounded. A towering giant tree, half frozen and half in flames, was swaying along the wind. At this moment, not far from it, stood a girl of foreign origin, holding a spirit flower of white flames and gazing at it with a solemn gaze. "Aisha, make the most of this opportunity. After all, it only comes around once." "Yes, master." With a gentle nod, Aisha's expression grew even more serious. Although she was now Yuziyu's apostle, Aisha still had her own thoughts. This was another terrifying aspect of the blood covenant, controlling the servant without affecting the servant's free will. In other words, Aisha now had her own cognition and the ability to think for herself. She deeply understood the value of the precious spirit flower in her hand, which could change a person's innate talent and even transform her into a higher being, an elemental life form. The fact that her master had given this precious item to her so readily filled her with gratitude. After a moment, her red lips slightly parted as the spirit flower turned into liquid and disappeared into Aisha's mouth in the blink of an eye. Immediately afterward, Aisha felt a violent and extremely domineering force engulfing her. A deafening roar reverberated through the sky, shaking the ground and the very sky. Looking up, a swirling firestorm dozens of meters high rose from the ground. Within this fire tornado, a calm and delicate face appeared from time to time. However, that visage was no longer of flesh but seemed to be formed from flame. Though lifelike, it was now composed of fire. It had a hint of ethereality and sanctity. I was born from fire and I shall burn within it until I am reduced to ashes. A soft and gentle murmur rang, like a vow and a promise, full of solemnity. It seems the transformation is complete. With a faint smile, Wuxia gazed at a tall and graceful figure gradually emerging from the firestorm not far away. The second elemental life form. Moreover, it was a fire elemental life form, known for its ferocity, dominance, and terrifying destructive power. An elemental life form coupled with Aisha's innate talents should be enough to shake the alliance of Southeast Asian nations, right? Muttering softly to himself, a faint smile appeared at the corner of Wuxia's lips. In a moment of reverie, he could already see an image of a flame sorceress, engulfed in a sea of fire and incinerating everything, slowly walking out of the battlefield. I, Aisha, bearing the name Fire, greets Master. In a sincere voice, the flames that covered the sky converged, ultimately taking the shape of a tall and graceful figure. At the same time, a figure with hands clasped together like a devout believer, also entered Wuxia's sight. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 281, Transformation of Bull Demon. Wuxia narrowed his eyes slightly as a series of information appeared before his eyes. Race, elemental life form. Rank, Tier 1 Transcendent. Innate talent, Master of Fire, Level 1. A formidable, excluding talent of elemental life form, which grants them ability to control and merge with flames. Death Stare, her eyes as deep as sapphires, possess a strange magical power. After gazing at someone for a prolonged period of time, she can easily perceive the weaknesses of a person or even a creature. Furthermore, she can also ignite unquenchable flames by focusing her gaze. As long as she keeps channeling spiritual energy, the flames would never extinguish. Unique abilities, Dance of the Black Mamba, a highly profound combat technique named after the Black Mamba. It's like a dance of snakes, graceful and deadly. Healing, assisted by gentle spiritual energy, she can heal some injuries and relieve some pain. Snake Walk, with a light, graceful and swift movement, she can retreat in an instant and attack in the next. Wild Bite, her hand like a snake's jaw, can launch an attack in an instant. Her attack can tear through the defenses of most creatures, even gouging out the flesh. Blood Covenant, after signing a blood covenant, the servant's heart and body belong entirely to the master. She is able to temporarily use part of the master's power and provide the master with evolution points through killing others. Elementalization, at the expense of stamina, she can turn her body into a pure elemental body, becoming immune to physical attacks and capable of burning everything, displaying the might of the name Element. After taking a thorough look at Aisha's now luxurious status screen, Wuxia was amazed. Another one with dual innate talents. The first innate talent to control the flame is not worth mentioning since it's a terrifying innate talent that all elemental life form possesses, but the second one is the innate talent she possessed as a human. Unexpectedly, it hasn't disappeared. Seems like this innate talent is some sort of psychic talent rather than physical talent. What's more, it has also undergone some wonderful changes as well, possibly due to becoming an elemental life form. She can ignite an unquenchable flame by focusing her gaze, Wuxia admired, smiling. This is definitely an innate talent that stood out from the rest. And this innate talent excelled in being unexpected. If used well, it could become Aisha's ace in the hole. Thanks to Master's generosity, Aisha has completed her transformation. After some training, I can easily become a Tier 2 Transcendent. Speaking softly, Aisha looked at Wuxia with an expression of reverence. And, nodding, Wuxia also affirmed, with your foundation along with the fire elemental flower, Tier 2 is indeed just a step away. At this point, Wuxia's gaze shifted to the north of North Canyon, advising, there is a spirit pond in North Canyon. Go nurture yourself there. After a few days I will use the life essence to baptize you. Thank you, Master. Thanking with a nod, Aisha's figure gradually faded into thin air. If one looked closer, he or she could certainly see numerous sparks flowing along the gentle breeze, flying toward the north. And this was the elementalization of fire. Invisible and formless, able to move with the wind. Meanwhile, watching Aisha's departure to the north, Wuxia shifted his gaze to the nearby Qin Gang. You may also withdraw. Yes, master. After responding, Qin Gang's figure also quietly vanished into the earth. Ha! Taking a deep breath, Yu Ziyu began to contemplate his own situation. Thanks to the appearance of apostles, he would not have to take the stage too often from now on, he could take the backstage and direct the show. However, before then he still needed to train himself and strive to step into Tier 4 and achieve the title of natural disaster. Thinking of this, Yu Ziyu thought of the Isotribute Spirit Stone Mine in the north. However, before rushing to the Isotribute Spirit Stone Mine, Yu Ziyu had to focus on Old Second Bull Demon. He would break through to Tier 2 in the next few days. By then, with Tier 2 Bull Demon guarding Misty Mountains, Yu Ziyu could leave without any worries. With these thoughts in mind, Yu Ziyu's consciousness descended into a segment of his roots, leading him deep into the underground part of North Canyon. In the depths of Earth, Bull Demon was undergoing the final preparations. 3 days later. Deep within the heart of North Canyon. Boom, 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 the earth and the mountains started quaking wildly. Following that, moo, a sound reminiscent of the ancient bellow suddenly echoed from the depths of the earth. Bull Demon, the second eldest of the 9 great beasts, had finally chosen to break through today. At this moment, if one were to look into the depths of the earth, he or she would certainly see waves of dense yellow spiritual energy surging toward a black bull like waves, one after another. Moo, giving out another bellow, Bull Demon lifted his hooves. After a moment, with a resounding crash, Bull Demon's front hooves touched the ground, sending a tremor visible to the naked eyes in all directions. Qin Gang, stabilize the earth, I don't want any damage to the underground city, a faint voice echoed in the air, bringing a change on the face of a sculpture-like figure. Shit. I almost forgot. Shouting in his mind, Qin Gang, hidden in the depths of the earth, started channeling his spiritual energy. After a moment, the surrounding land seemed to solidify, finally calming the frightening tremors. Fortunately, it was the unintentional stomp of Bull Demon. Otherwise, Qin Gang might not have been able to stabilize the earth. After all, Bull Demon had advanced to Tier 2. His spiritual energy was climbing at a rate visible to the naked eyes. In a short time, it had climbed to a staggering 170,000. And right at this very moment, if one were to look at Bull Demon, he or she would definitely notice something very strange. Bull Demon's body was undergoing a bizarre transformation. His body was continually shrinking, but this was not a reduction in size, rather his body was being repeatedly tempered, like fine steel being forged 100 times over, becoming harder and thicker. Just a single glance was enough to tell the sheer mass of muscles he had. His every sinew and muscle was akin to a coiled dragon. And at this moment something astonishing happened. Much to the bewildered gaze of Yu Ziyu and Qin Gang, Bull Demon slowly stood up. Yes, he stood up. Just like a human, he stood up. However, Bull Demon still retained his crescent-shaped horns on his head. Moreover, his body was still undergoing transformation as if to better adapt to his current form. His legs became thicker and solid black muscles covered him like a layer of armor. And this transformation lasted for who knows how long until... Moo, a deep and resonant bellow as if from ancient times echoed in the depths of the earth. The terrifying bellow even set off shock waves of sound. At this moment, if one looked deep into the earth, they would see a massive figure standing at a height of 3 meters, bearing crescent-shaped bull horns on its head, slowly walking. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by fearsome tremors and a heavy air, an invisible pressure enveloped the surroundings. Old Bull greets Master. Looking at the section of green root emerging from the rock wall not far away, the towering 3-meter-tall humanoid figure knelt on one knee on the ground. Sylvan, Happy New Year. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 282, Humanoid Form. Humanoid. Staring at the figure kneeling on one knee not far away, Yu Ziyu was at a loss for words for a while. Are you kidding me? That's a humanoid form. When the 9 tails spoke like a human, Yu Ziyu tolerated it. Now, Bull Demon has taken on a humanoid form as well. At this moment, it was not just Yu Ziyu, even Qin Gang, who had slowly emerged from the rock wall, had his eyes widen in astonishment. Second brother, you, Qin Gang stuttered, gazing at the nearby massive, standing at a height of 3 meters, exuding an imposing presence. He was having a hard time coming to terms with Bull Demon's transformation. The Bull Demon broke into laughter, not minding it either. Instead, he explained, isn't it more convenient to be in human form? So, During the transformation I thought of turning into a human. As a result, my body changed slowly according to my wishes. Here Bull Demon raised his arm and touched the back of his head. A simple and honest smile appeared on his face as he added, "This is really unexpected, I'm a bit baffled now." "Oh, are you baffled too?" The corner of Yuziu's lips twitched, feeling a bit helpless. After all, even Bull Demon himself had no idea how his humanoid form would come to be. However, looking at the massive figure not far away, one thing was for sure: Bull Demon, with his 3-meter-tall body, bulging muscles which were as hard as stone, was truly imposing. Moreover, his dark skin, even in the dim depths of the underground, shimmered with a faint luster, resembling a metallic luster, as if they were saying, "This is how tough it is." The crescent-shaped horns on top of Bull Demon's head, glimmering with a sharp gleam, like the edge of a blade. Just one glance was enough to tell that they were extremely sharp, sharp as a blade. These were undoubtedly incredibly fearsome pairs of horns. At this moment, as his gaze shifted downward, what caught the eye was a rough and rugged face. It was the face of a bull, with a touch of unfamiliarity in its ferocity. However, deep within those glimmering eyes, an occasional glint of unknown brilliance appeared, as if it were reminding that he might not be as simple as he appears. Yuziu took a deep breath and focused his gaze over Bull Demon. After a moment, a series of information flooded into his mind. Race: mutant wild buffalo. Innate talent: crescent bull horns, sharper than ever, his horns have transformed into the most formidable weapon. No one can withstand the charge of his horns, and if they can, he'll charge again. Unique abilities: rampage: after a brief accumulation of power, he charges forward, with a terrifying impact that can't be compared, not even to a train. Earthquake: thanks to his tons of weight and the aid of his terrifying spiritual energy, he can shatter the earth and tear apart mountains and rivers in an instant. Gravity field: thanks to the control over the earth, Bull Demon can forcefully interfere with the forces of gravity in an area. And depending on the consumption of spiritual energy, the gravity can be continuously increased and correspondingly decreased. Evolution direction: humanoid form: for better and effective combat power, he has taken a humanoid form, which with his formidable strength, also brings the agility that is not possessed by its counterparts. Staring deeply at Bull Demon's status screen, Yuziu's gaze focused on the evolution direction section. Evolution direction: humanoid form. Murmuring, Yuziu looked at Bull Demon's current appearance with a sense of understanding. This should be Bull Demon's new evolution path, chosen in accordance to his heart's desire. However, to be honest, Yuziu felt more of astonishment than bewilderment in regards to Bull Demon's humanoid form. After all, there had been legends of demon-beast clan transformation. In this modern era of transcendence, these constantly evolving mutant beasts might be the embryonic forms of the demon-beast clan. However, compared to the powerful and intelligent demon-beast clan, these recently evolved mutant beasts had just begun to awaken their intelligence. They were uncivilized and their evolution was incomplete. The Demon Beast clan, on the other hand, were a higher race with their own culture and heritage, much like humans. So, these newly evolving mutant beasts were not yet worthy of being called demon beasts. Furthermore, the powerful members of the Demon Beast clan could take on humanoid forms in the legends. And Yuziu had his own interpretation of this humanoid transformation. One was an illusion: they appeared as a human on the surface, but still retained their ferocious form of the Demon Beast clan. This was a kind of illusion and cognitive interference. The other was the evolution of life: they continuously evolved using humans as a reference point. At the end of this evolution, they should retain their racial characteristics while taking on a humanoid form. Like the current Bull Demon, his humanoid form with the body of a human and the head of a bull was one such form of human evolution. As for what the final form of this evolution would be, Yuziu guessed that it might be a tall man with crescent-shaped bull horns, at least much more attractive than he looks now. The current Bull Demon appeared too ferocious and hideous. "I guess, evolution should be a matter of choice," murmured Yuziu, having come to his own understanding. One evolution was like that of the Nine Tails, constantly pursuing the marks of bloodline, evolving further and further in the direction of the celestial fox lineage, ultimately evolving into a nine-tailed celestial fox. The other was like Bull Demon, using human as a reference, shedding their original form, evolving continuously, and combining the strengths of humans and Demon Beast clan in an ever-repeating transformation. At this point, one had to admit that the humanoid form was indeed the most perfect form. It should be brought to notice that the humanoid form was not unique to humans. In legends, ancient vampires and divine angels, which were not human, also possessed humanoid forms. This indicated the universality of the humanoid form. Thinking about this, Yuziyu's heart skipped a beat. I wonder if I can also evolve in the direction of humans? However, after a moment, as if realizing something, the corner of Yuziyu's lips twitched. The humanoid form of a tree was not unfamiliar to him. The image of pulling out a root and running under the sunset was precisely what he imagined as his humanoid form, right? With roots as feet and branches as arms. Thinking of this, Yuziyu could not help but break into a fit of cough. Forget it, let's forget it for now. Saying this, Yuziyu put this kind of evolution to the back of his mind. This kind of evolution was suitable for mutant beasts but not for a guy like him, a sentient tree. If he really wanted to take on humanoid form, he should focus on becoming stronger, much stronger. Then, in the future, he could delve into the divine ability of shapeshifting. The reason he thought of this divine ability was because Yuziyu had already realized the terrifying nature of such abilities. Using the power of principles, it should not be difficult to alter one's form in life. The premise was that he could research or follow the legacy of the previous era. According to Yuziyu's guess, there should have been a divine ability of humanoid transformation in the previous era. The only thing he could not be sure of was whether it had been widely passed down to this era. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 283 Weapon. Bull Demons was undoubtedly a big boost for Misty Mountains. Now, looking at this burly humanoid figure, Yuziyu felt a lot more at ease. In light of this, Yuziyu straightforwardly stated his plan: I'm planning to go to the Northern Territory soon. I'll leave Misty Mountains to your care. Alright, Divine Tree, Bull Demon agreed without any objection, nodding. However, after a moment, as if realizing something, Bull Demon suddenly stared fixedly at the Yuziyu's roots with a hint of fervor in his eyes. Divine Tree, I've taken on this human-like form, so shouldn't I have a suitable weapon? Bull Demon asked, scratching the back of his head and wearing a bit of a shy expression. Weapon? Yuziyu muttered in a confused voice, but after looking at Bull Demon's empty hands, he nodded his agreement. I guess it's reasonable, but is there really an appropriate weapon for Bull Demon? However, at that moment, as if sensing something, Yuziyu suddenly froze. He noticed that Bull Demon's gaze was fixed firmly on him. This guy? Yuziyu was speechless and asked directly, You're not thinking about something inappropriate, are you? With a sly smile, Bull Demon responded, I just want to make a handy axe. I can sharpen the blade myself, but I'll need a good handle for my axe, which only you can provide, master. I guess you're right, Yuziyu nodded. Yuziyu had no choice but to admit it. As a tree, his entire body was full of treasure. His roots and branches were excellent materials, even without undergoing any kind of polishing. In terms of hardness, they were unparalleled. Not to mention, Yuziyu's roots and even his branches had wondrous power. Bull Demon likely noticed the staff in Golden Monkey's hand and got this idea. Be that as it may, Yuziyu thought it was a good idea too. Bull Demon had just broken through to Tier 2, and Yuziyu hadn't prepared any gifts yet. If a section of his branch could satisfy Bull Demon, he was more than willing to give it to him. After all, for Yuziyu, a branch was not a big deal. With that in mind, Yuziyu stated, Come and pick it up tomorrow. Having promised, Yuziyu's consciousness returned to his original body, located in the Himalayan mountains. Soon after returning, Yuziyu looked at his branches, and began carefully selecting them. Since it's a gift, it has to look good as well. And considering Bull Demon's massive 3-meter-tall body, he would probably choose a large axe, so the length of the handle should be around 2 to 3 meters. With this in mind, Yuziyu picked a 3-meter-long excellent-looking branch. With a thought, the branch snapped from the trunk. At the same time, Yuziyu's 2 branches reached toward it and began polishing the selected branch. A short while after, a 3-meter-long arm-thick smooth wooden stick stood silently on the ground not far from Yuziyu. However, that was not the important thing. The essence lay in Yuziyu's emerald-green spiritual energy that gradually enveloped the wooden stick. One could faintly see a diamond-like texture gradually emerging on the surface. Crystallization, one of Yuziyu's divine abilities, could enhance the hardness of this wooden staff. Even though the crystallization would disappear shortly without Yuziyu's spiritual energy support, the hardness of the staff would have increased after undergoing crystallization. Moreover, it would give the seemingly rough wooden staff a subtle crystal-like texture, which would greatly improve its visual appeal. Considering it was a gift, Wuxia was willing to go an extra mile to enhance its appearance. If not for his limited means, Wuxia would have preferred to craft a big axe for Bull Demon, but unfortunately, his current abilities didn't allow him to do so. At least, not to his satisfaction. While contemplating this, Wuxia's eyes lit up, as if he was struck with a brilliant idea. Who would be more suitable than a panda to forge weapons? Murmuring, the corner of Wuxia's lips rose into a smile. After all, pandas ate various materials. Brewmaster could easily refine high-quality, sturdy ores. Furthermore, due to his innate talent, he could also temper various ores, and when combined with his fire breath, if he mastered some craftsmanship of humans, a weapon craftsman would be born. However, this was not the important thing. The main point is that even though Brewmaster was lazy, he really enjoys forging. Just by looking at the self-made hat on his head and the boots he wears, it was quite clear. As such, Wuxia also put the craftsman creation plan on the agenda. After all, with the development of Misty Mountains, weapons would be definitely indispensable. While he might not be able to create an innate flying sword like the silver-haired General Li, crafting divine weapons from humans' legends should not be difficult. It was not because Wuxia had any secret techniques. It was because in this era of transcendence, various extraordinary materials were emerging. With these materials, crafting the legendary divine weapons should be easy. Thinking of this, Wuxia could not help but recall a saying among humans: what truly determines scientific development is not technology but materials. Indeed, it was not just science and technology. Even in this era of transcendence, the quality of weapons was determined not by technology but by materials. Just like Wuxia's tree roots and branches, even with minimal refinement, their hardness alone would be enough to be much coveted by humans. Furthermore, weapons of the era of transcendence should have certain requirements for a material's resilience to spiritual energy. For instance, ordinary human weapons could probably not withstand even 1,000 units of spiritual energy. The maximum limit for alloy weapons was likely no more than 10,000 units of spiritual energy. However, Wuxia's tree roots and branches could withstand tens of thousands of spiritual energy without shattering. So, one could also imagine the value of Wuxia's branches and roots as weapons. If the humans came to know about this, I suspect they'd have one more reason to want to get rid of me. Thinking about it, Wuxia could not help but smile wryly. After all, his body was big enough to create tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of weapons, enough to arm several regiments. So, it would be strange if humans did not covet him. Unfortunately, all they could do was just covet. Getting rid of him was an impossible thing. As long as someone dared to have any plans for him, Wuxia was ready to ensure that they would not see the light of day. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 284, Fiendish Bull Demon. Time passed swiftly like a galloping. Several days had gone by in the blink of an eye. For the last 3 days, a graceful figure, veiled in purple, and with a blood-red mark on her glabella, had been quietly bathing in the depths of a spirit pond. At this moment, her eyelids trembled slightly. Boom! Accompanied by the flickering of her eyes, clusters of flames burned around the spirit pond. The next moment, these flames, like living entities, began to swirl around the pond. Before long, they formed a terrifying firestorm that reached tens of meters in height. In the center of the firestorm, a tall figure gradually disappeared as if merging into the flames. Only a humanoid silhouette could be seen in the firestorm from time to time, like a reminder of something. Not bad. Whispering his admiration, Qin Gang, sitting on a treetop in the distance, took a sip of wine. Then he advised, "Elementalization is our biggest life-saving trump card, as well as our strongest move. If we can use it flexibly and skillfully, our combat power will increase significantly." Indeed. Amid the melodious laughter akin to twinkling of silver bells, the flames that filled the sky converged, forming a tall silhouette in the blink of an eye. Tap, 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 gently stepping on the pond's surface, Aisha slowly walked toward the figure not far away. "It's rare for you to come here. Is something the matter?" Asking softly, Aisha looked at Qin Gang, her eyes shimmering. "This guy invited me to Misty Mountains. I wonder if I can fight him now?" At this moment, as if sensing the belligerent spirit rising in Aisha, the corner of Qin Gang's lips curled into a smile as he nonchalantly stated, "If you want to fight me, let's do it another day. Master is preparing to leave today, and we're going to send him off together." With that, Qin Gang's figure gradually solidified. After a while, much to Aisha's surprise, Qin Gang turned into a genuine sculpture, before being blown away by a gust of wind, scattering in all directions. Second stage of elementalization? Murmuring, Aisha suppressed the astonishment in her heart. The second stage of elementalization was the rank of elementalization mastery. Unlike other abilities, elementalization was their most fundamental ability, and mastering it was a rather complex process. The second stage of elementalization signified more terrifying control, with greater finesse. For instance, Qin Gang at the second stage of elementalization could not only merge with the earth but could also transform into flying sand and dust. Furthermore, his consumption of spiritual energy was reduced, and his utilization was more versatile. If she could reach the second stage of elementalization, she could not only merge with her own flames, but she could even assimilate with enemy flames or ordinary flames. This was the terrifying power of elementalization, the fundamental ability of all elemental lifeforms. In a certain sense, elementalization could be considered an unbeatable ability. If abilities were graded, elementalization could definitely rank in the top 10 among all unique abilities. I really shouldn't have underestimated him, murmuring in her heart. Aisha fell into silence for a moment. This kind of formless pretense was the most fatal, and Aisha could do nothing about it. After all, Qin Gang, who had already reached the second stage of elementalization, was much stronger than before. While it was not a world of difference, it was definitely something she could not currently handle. After all, as an elemental life form, they could understand each other's terrifying aspects better than anyone else. Meanwhile, at the peak of the Himalayan mountains. Howl, a gentle breeze blew over, bringing in flying sand which slowly converged into a silhouette. Master. With a smile, Qin Gang looked at the divine tree bathing in ice and fire not far away with eyes filled with respect. And, after nodding in return, Yu Ziyu's gaze shifted to the side of Qin Gang. The next moment, a wisp of flame lit up before turning into a blazing fire. Then, a tall figure slowly walked out from within these flames. Aisha, calling softly, Yu Ziyu looked at the nearby approaching girl, a glimmer flashing in his eyes. Master, what can I do for you? Nodding gently, Aisha respectfully asked. I will be leaving Misty Mountains soon, you should also prepare to return to the Alliance. Yes, Master. Aisha readily agreed, showing no refusal. She had long known her mission. Just like the mysterious eldest sister, she was heading to the human world. She did not need to do anything else, she just had to destroy the peace between the ASEAN nations and China. And as for what to say, Aisha was already prepared. There's a hidden force within China that doesn't want to see an alliance between China and ASEAN. So, on the day of the summit, they ambushed and exterminated 2 delegations. And to cover up the truth, the Chinese government even fabricated traces of a beast tide. With this, the Chinese government would not be able to deny it no matter how. She did not need to frame China too much either, just a suitable excuse to make the alliance take action. As for how and when the alliance would take action, Aisha had no idea either. But this incident would definitely create a rift between ASEAN and China, and once a rift was created, their future actions would naturally become predictable. Besides, there were no friends among nations, only eternal interests. Now, Aisha had provided the alliance with a good excuse to seek their own interests. Given the nature of the alliance, they would not let it pass. At this moment, after arranging Aisha, Yu Ziyu's gaze turned to a nearby robust figure that resembled a mythological fiend with the body of a human and the head of a bull. The mere sight of it would send a chill down one's spine. Especially with the massive axe hanging on its robust back, the entire figure gave off an indescribable aura of malevolence. It was none other than old second bull demon in his humanoid form. As for his giant axe, the handle was gifted by Yu Ziyu, and the axe blade was found in the weapons arsenal of Maple Leaf City. Then Qin Gang reinforced it. Although it was assembled in a simple manner, this giant axe was quite terrifying. It was said that just in terms of weight, it weighed several tons. The wind pressure it generated when it was swung was simply astonishing. Not to mention there was also Bull Demon's spiritual energy as well as the gravity field. It could be said that with this giant axe, Bull Demon's combat power would increase by 30 to 40%. From this, it was easy to imagine the importance of weapons for a strong individual. It was no wonder that Bull Demon, who has always been simple and quiet, would actively seek a weapon. This was not just a weapon, it was a lifeline. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 285, Journey to the Northern Region. I will be heading to the north in the coming days. I leave this place in your hands. Wuxia calmly addressed the various mutant beasts that appeared intermittently in the thick mist. Yes, master, Bull Demon nodded and stepped forward, assuring, I will certainly take good care of Misty Mountains. Okay. Wuxia placed much confidence in Bull Demon. Old Second was steady by nature and now he had also advanced to Tier 2. Although he had not stabilized his cultivation, his extremely terrifying physical strength was more than enough to guard Misty Mountains. As for the eldest of the nine tails, she would naturally be accompanying Wuxia. This little red fox was extremely clingy and would not leave Wuxia's side. Moreover, as a member of the celestial fox lineage, she had rather high requirements for her environment. Nowadays she hardly touches the ground. Except for the necessary rest on Wuxia's tree branches, she would even quench her thirst with Wuxia's life essence. However, this lifestyle allowed her strength to progress at an astonishing rate. According to Nine Tails, celestial foxes must remain pure and untainted, and in this regard even their cultivation speed would be affected. The environment Wuxia provided, combined with her devotion to cultivation, had led to Nine Tails' rapid advancement. In just a few days her cultivation had stabilized, and her spiritual energy climbed to 200,000. This incredible pace of advancement rivaled Wuxia's own, just a few steps behind. Wuxia's amazing cultivation speed was partly due to being at Tier 3 Transcendent, which naturally allowed him to absorb spiritual energy more quickly. The other factor being his primary root, which ran quite deep within the earth like a wood dragon, constantly absorbing the spirit stone mine. Even so, Nine Tails was only slightly behind him in cultivation speed. Nonetheless, Wuxia welcomed her rapid progress, the faster the better. After all, Nine Tails could serve as his right hand, capable of accomplishing many tasks. As he gazed around at the various mutant beasts once more, his gaze momentarily paused on Old Fourth Sarcosuchus. Then he advised, Old Fourth, you can't just laze around while Old Second guards Misty Mountains. Naturally. Old Fourth grinned, revealing his fearsome teeth before lifting its stout legs, taking a few steps forward and inquiring, Master, when will you be coming back? In about 1 or 2 months. After thinking it over, Wuxia gave a rough estimate because he was not entirely certain. After all, the journey from Misty Mountains to the island where the Isotribute Spirit Stone Mine was located was quite a long one, spanning the entire snowy region. While it might be relatively easy for other mutant beasts, it could be a bit tricky for a massive tree like him. However, he was in luck. With the River of Earth ability, even if he took his time, he would be able to arrive there. Moreover, it was rare for Wuxia to leave Misty Mountains and he was curious about the world outside. With all these thoughts swirling in his mind, Wuxia was ready to depart. After a moment, boom, with the surge of terrifying spiritual energy, the ground suddenly violently shook. Subsequently, in the gaze of various mutant beasts, the ground started undulating like waves, slowly started surging toward the north, carrying a massive tree. Fortunately, this River of Earth was only a little over 20 meters wide, so when it flowed calmly towards the north, it created no significant commotion. However, it was a spine-chilling sight. After all, he was a large tree. Even if most of Wuxia's trunk was submerged underground, Wuxia's tree body stood 10 meters tall. The view of a tree slowly traveling north could be quite unsettling at first glance. However, what was even more fearsome was likely the ground itself. At this moment, if one looked deep into the earth, he or she would see countless roots moving within, slowly wriggling deep within the earth, like the tentacles of an octopus. It was terrifying and monstrous and, of course, it was quite spine-chilling. Shortly after, staring blankly on the figure heading north until Wuxia disappeared at the horizon, Bull Demon finally turned around and faced the various mutant beasts before ordering, disperse. As he said this, Bull Demon seemed to recall something and added an advisory, in the coming days you should remain vigilant. After all, with Master away, our control over Misty Mountains will decrease significantly. Understood, second brother, everyone responded in unison, acknowledging the situation. Indeed. It was true that even without the divine tree, the veil of thick mist would still be lingering over Misty Mountains, and there were thousands of peculiar mist beasts created by the divine tree patrolling at all times. However, the entire Misty Mountains had lost its most powerful surveillance. That was Wuxia himself. Originally, the thick mist was Wuxia's eyes, and he could capture any slight movements. But now that he was gone, Misty Mountains' thick mist naturally could not monitor Misty Mountains' activities. As such, even if outsiders sneaked in, it would be difficult for Bull Demon and the others to discover it immediately. So, Bull Demon reminded the various mutant beasts to remain vigilant. If outsiders managed to infiltrate and caught a glimpse of the secrets deep within Misty Mountains, Bull Demon might have to bear the brunt of the responsibility. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, several days had gone by. At this moment, in the heart of the snowy fields in the outskirts of the Northern Territories, on an expansive and barren piece of land, a tree over 10 meters tall stood quietly rooted. At the canopy of the tree, a beautiful red fox as bright as fire happened to be quietly lying. "Master, have you discovered something again?" Glancing at the deep blue sky, Ninetails curiously inquired. "I've noticed a pack of mutant snow wolves entering my territory." As he spoke, Yuziu's gaze also turned toward the distance. After a while, a pack of dozens of slowly approaching gigantic wolves as white as snow entered his sight. Judging by their appearance, this pack of mutant snow wolves had likely just finished hunting, as there were traces of blood still lingering around their mouths. "Not bad at all, 6 of them are in Tier 0 Level 9, with a playful smile, the roots buried in the ground by Yuziu silently searched. After a moment, schlick, schlick, schlick. Yuziu's roots attacked at a speed almost too fast to be even visible to the naked eyes, dragging the mutant snow wolves into the ground before they could even react. At this moment, if one looked deep into the earth, he or she would surely see numerous peculiar things resembling dumplings tied to the thick roots. This was the harvest of the past 3 days, thousands of mutant beasts, with some of them being transcendents. Unfortunately, due to the urgency of the journey, Yuziu did not want to waste time, except for necessary rest. So, the fate of these mutant beasts could only be described as pitiful, as they were slain for evolution points and at the same time, acted as nourishment to replenish Yuziu's spiritual energy. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 286, absorbing the ice attribute Spirit Stone Mine. Several days later, in the northern part of Siberia along the coast. Rumble, 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 accompanied by fearsome tremors, a towering tree was moving along the ground. That must be the place. Looking at a small island in the distance across the ocean, Yuziu's gaze narrowed slightly. With his current vision, he could naturally tell that it was a small island. Just at that moment, as if sensing his presence, screech, screech, sharp, grating cries came from high above. Looking up, 2 monk vultures bathing in flames could be seen hovering in the sky. Inferno birds. Yuziu let out a soft chuckle. He then also saw 2 familiar figures on the back of the Inferno birds. One was the panda Brewmaster and the other was White Snake. However, it was quite surprising that White Snake's body had grown longer and her whole body seemed to be frozen, giving off an inexplicable sheen under the sun. "I guess White Snake has been having a wonderful time," Yuziu nonchalantly commented. Also, he could not help but notice the significant increase in White Snake's aura. As an ice attribute mutant beast, someone who loved the ice element, a medium-sized ice attribute Spirit Stone Mine was an absolute treasure trove for White Snake. If other ice attribute mutant beasts' absorption speed of ice attribute Spirit Stone Mine was 1, then White Snake's absorption speed might be 2 or even 3. With such a terrifying absorption rate, White Snake's cultivation speed was naturally astonishing. Divine Tree. Master. Greeting in unison, both Brewmaster and White Snake, riding on the vultures, descending from the sky. And Yuziu nodded slightly in response as the corner of his lips curled up into a smile. But now was not the time for a reunion. Yuziu gazed deeply at the nearby island. With his senses, he could detect the rich ice elements. This might really be a medium-sized ice attribute Spirit Stone Mine. Mumbling in a calm voice, Yuziu could not help but show a hint of excitement. A medium-sized ice elemental stone mine was worth a lot and was considered a first-class resource even among human nations. Such a mine was enough to cultivate dozens or even hundreds of ice attribute transcendent. Its value was enormous. However, now, this ice attribute Spirit Stone Mine belonged to him. With a grin, Yuziu's tremendous spiritual energy surged. In a moment, a deafening clap resounded as the earth shook violently. Following that, to the astonishment of Brewmaster and White Snake, Yuziu's body slowly sank into the ground. Yes, he was sinking into the ground. He sank deeper and deeper, as if using an earth escape technique. With his ability River of Earth, it was not that difficult. In the face of River of Earth, even the hardest of the ground would turn as soft as mud, allowing him to easily pass through. Thus, Wuxia was able to sink into the earth until he was no longer visible on the surface. Divine Tree. Bewildered, Brewmaster looked at the barren ground where the tree had vanished. Let's go. We'll wait for him on the island. Saying that, a fox bathing in flame left, treading the very air itself. On the island? Stunned for a moment, Brewmaster soon followed without hesitation. See. He patted the vulture and headed in the direction they had come from. At this moment he could faintly sense some movements in the Arctic Ocean. Vaguely, he felt as if a massive creature was moving through the cold ocean. A short while after this. At the center of the island. Boom, boom, boom. Continuous tremors surged, uncontrollably shaking the entire island. At the same time, from the peak of the island's central mountain peak, a burst of emerald green light flashed. Moments later. Swoosh, 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 thousands of glowing willow leaves broke through the ground before a radiant tree emerged from the earth, who, looking at the Arctic Ocean spanning several kilometers, Wuxia exhaled a long deep breath, relieved. Fortunately for Wuxia, the ocean was shallow here, and the island was not that far. Otherwise, it would have been an excruciating journey for him. After all, his primary route extended thousands of kilometers into the earth. While his ability, River of Earth, allowed him to easily traverse the ground, it was too troublesome to pull out his route. In light of this, Wuxia could only choose to sink his tree body and travel underground, similar to Earth Escape. Now, it appears that Earth Escape was quite useful. Be that as it may, Wuxia could not help but feel a bit helpless. I must learn an ability to control my size or acquire a divine ability. Softly murmuring, Wuxia's eyes could not stop flickering. While his enormous body granted him tremendous power, it was extremely inconvenient. A journey that would have taken Bull Demon a day or two instead took him 8 to 9 days to complete. This inconvenience could not be described in words alone. If he did not find a solution, as his primary route was upgraded and even went deeper into the earth, it would be even more difficult for him to move. While these thoughts were swirling in his mind, his countless roots had already delved deep into the island. A short while after, his lips curled up into a smile as if sensing something. Found it. Saying this, Wuxia's consciousness shifted to a particular rootlet. The next moment he saw an ice mountain through the perspective of that rootlet. Immediately after, a chill slowly started spreading. He felt as if he was in a 1,000-year-old ice cavern, with an endless expanse of pure white. At the same time, the dense and tenacious ice-attribute spiritual energy continued to condense in the air. The ice-attribute spirit stone mine. Softly murmuring, Wuxia controlled numerous rootlets toward the spirit stone mine. Moments later. Boom, boom, boom. With countless roots expanding and contracting, an extremely dense chill spread along the rootlets. In an instant, Wuxia's tree body turned completely pure white, covered in countless ice flakes. Ashish, Earth Escape is a technique seen in many martial arts novels. It's a technique to travel through the earth by merging with the earth or pushing aside the soil around the user. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 287, Uncontrollable Rage and Changes in the Mist. His spiritual energy was increasing at a speed visible to the naked eyes. At the same time, an intense cold continuously spread along his body. For Wuxia, this was possibly the most crucial and the most challenging cultivation session he had ever undertaken. In this session, Wuxia aimed to break through the threshold of several million spiritual energy, possibly advancing into Tier 4. Or reaffirming his plan, Wuxia exhaled a long deep breath before deciding to delve deeper into his training. You guys can continue with your own cultivation, Wuxia told his companions who had returned to the island by now, Brewmaster and White Snake. He shifted his attention to Nine Tails, who was walking in the air. The corners of his lips curled up into a smile before a small flame ignited in his canopy. This was the place he had prepared for Nine Tails to rest. The sight of the blazing area also brought a smile on Nine Tails' lips. Then she walked over in an elegant manner, and selected a comfortable spot before lying down. For her, this was an alternative form of hibernation. Bit by bit, time passed, and in the blink of an eye, weeks had gone by. During this period, Wuxia's spiritual energy successfully broke the threshold of 5.5 million. Furthermore, as Wuxia was rooted on an island, his roots could already extend into the Arctic Ocean. Although this nearby cold ocean was considered shallow and lacked powerful mutant fish, it still provided a remarkable number of evolution points. Now, if one looked toward the deep ocean, he or she would clearly see the roots coming out of the island walls in the ocean, extending into the ice-cold ocean, and wantonly hunting any passing mutant fish. However, who knows whether it was because of the era of transcendence, but as blood dyed the ocean red, mutant fish that were starting to gain sentience all chose to stay away. Consequently, Wuxia had no choice but to extend his tentacle-like roots farther into the ocean. Of course, the evolution points acquired were more than sufficient. Wuxia's current evolution points had already reached a staggering 400,000. Including the 50,000 he had saved, he harvested the remaining 350,000 during the journey in the snow-covered wilderness and from the icy ocean. This demonstrated the ocean's abundance. Furthermore, this was just the ice-cold Arctic Ocean and a shallow one at that. Thinking of this, Wuxia's gaze shifted toward the depths of the ocean, an even deeper and farther part of the ocean. I might run into an opponent that might pose a threat over there, Wuxia chuckled, not minding it at all. A threat was still a threat, but it was nothing more than another battle to him. As far as he was concerned, it was nearly impossible for anyone to completely overpower and suppress him. After all, he was already beginning to upgrade his secondary roots. Ding, please confirm if you like to use 300,000 evolution points to upgrade a secondary root. Yes, Wuxia readily agreed with a nod. Spending 300,000 evolution points to strengthen a single secondary root was indeed astounding. However, rewards and efforts were naturally balanced. Because at this moment, Wuxia felt a torrent of strange energy surging from the secondary root. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Amidst the continuous tremors, Wuxia's dozens of tree roots, each as thick as a person's embrace, were trembling incessantly. What was even more astonishing was that the trembling of the secondary root gave rise to tall waves in the Arctic Ocean. For a moment, nearly half of the ocean seemed to be intimidated by the might of the upgraded secondary root. Meanwhile, in misty mountains, unbeknown to Wuxia, a deep and resonant bellow, like one from ancient times, suddenly resonated through the sky. Moo, billowing sound waves swept outward, causing even the boundless forest to bend slightly. It looked as if the trees were bowing in submission. Who is it? Who is it? Amidst the maniacal and furious roar, Bull Demon, a bull-headed humanoid-bodied creature, seemed to be consumed by rage. His chest heaved up and down with anger. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! He had been entrusted by the divine tree to guard misty mountains. But now, something had gone wrong, horribly wrong. It was not a simple incident. At that very moment. Boom, boom, boom. Amid continuous tremors, an extremely massive wave of mist was surging from the distance. Second brother, what's wrong? Sarcosuchus asked in a hoarse voice, perplexed. It was unusual for his second brother to act this way. In the world of mutant beasts, Bull Demon was known for his composure. Yet now the Bull Demon was furious. Even though he was trying to suppress it, many mutant beasts could still sense a fearsome oppressive aura emanating from him. Suppressed yet terrifying, it was like a volcano on the verge of eruption, a terrifying sight. Lupin and Slytherin have gone missing. Hearing Sarcosuchus's inquiry, Bull Demon exhaled a long deep breath before replying in an ice-cold voice. What? Sarcosuchus' expression immediately changed, taken aback. After all, Lupin, Slytherin, and even Oris were not your average mutant beast. As deformed mutant beasts valued and nurtured by the divine tree with all his efforts, there was no doubt about their innate talent. Their innate talents might even exceed those of the 9 great beasts. Within Misty Mountains, these 3 little ones' status was somewhat exceptional due to their innate talents and the divine tree's attention. Regrettably, the divine tree needed to go to the north to cultivate and could not bring them along. Therefore, they were entrusted in Bull Demon's care. Yet now, under the Bull Demon's nose, Lupin and the Slytherin had gone missing? It was no wonder Bull Demon was boiling with rage. This was a task assigned to him by the divine tree. More importantly, Bull Demon was loyal and amiable by nature, and he got along well with the 3 little ones, treating them like family. In human terms, Bull Demon treated these 3 little ones as his younger siblings. However, now, Sarcosuchus suddenly suggested, perhaps they are just lost. After all, Misty Mountains is so. Before he could finish his sentence, the approaching Sarcosuchus in the distance displayed a fearsome killing intent in his eyes, as if he had noticed something. What's that? At this moment, Sarcosuchus noticed that Bull Demon had a severely injured and unconscious figure in his hands. The figure had multiple ears and appeared quite frail. It was none other than Orus, a cute little monkey with a strong sense of perception. But now this little guy's chest was sunken and drenched in thick blood. Hiya! Sarcosuchus deeply exhaled and raised his head. The roar. An inexplicable roar kept echoing, and in just a few breaths, it resonated throughout the entire Misty Mountains. At the same time, countless mutant beasts who heard this call were all shaken. The terrifying bloodlust made many of them shudder. Faintly, the mutant beasts felt that something big had happened. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 288, Killing Intent and Clues. Boom, 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 the earth quaked as powerful auras emerged one after another. For a moment, the entire Misty Mountains could not stop shaking. Did something happen? In the southern part of Misty Mountains, Golden Ant, with his hands crossed over his chest, glanced deeply into the distance. Then he kicked the ground with his tiny legs. With a thunderous boom, he turned into a cannonball and shot toward the distance. On another side. Ruhar. White Tiger spread his wings, and with a flap, soared into the sky. It seems like something major has happened. While in doubt, even the carefree White Tiger felt a sudden tension. He was already startled by Bull Demon's bellow. Furthermore, if even the usually cold and aloof Sarcosuchus was also reacting this way, he realized that something major had indeed occurred. Not long after, near North Canyon, as powerful mutant beasts arrived one after another, the surroundings fell into an eerie silence. A frigid and terrifying aura had enveloped the area. Ordinary mutant beasts not only dared not make any movements but were even too afraid to even breathe loudly. At this moment, it was the stage for the 9 great beasts, the 3 generals, and the elemental commander. What happened? Qin Gang, emerging from the ground and observing the unusually solemn atmosphere, asked with a puzzled look on his face. It seems like Lupin and Slytherin are missing. Thorns, who had already arrived, cast a glance at Qin Gang and replied. What? Before Qin Gang could react, the usually taciturn Lung Feng's expression changed dramatically. Lupin and Slytherin, those were the names he gave them. He had taken care of these deformed mutant beasts since they were young. They were like his family, especially after losing his sister. But now... Crack, crack, crisp popping sounds rang as Lung Feng's knuckles turned white. At this moment, Lung Feng's unusual emotions seemed to have been noticed by the humanoid bull-headed Bull Demon. He let out a deep sigh and apologized. I'm sorry, this is my fault. I shouldn't have let them play in the inner circle. Saying so, a tinge of guilt appeared on Bull Demon's face. He had thought that the inner circle of Misty Mountains would be safe. He never expected for such an incident to occur. Now Lupin and Slytherin's fate was unknown. If they were alive, that would be fortunate. But if they were not, he could hardly absolve oneself from the blame. Just at that moment, before anyone could say anything, a cold voice shattered the deathly silence. Now is not the time to dwell on responsibilities. The most pressing issue at hand is to find Lupin and Slytherin. Saying this, Sarcosuchus, who looked no different than a small mountain, slowly approached Bull Demon. Then, amidst the bewildered gazes of many mutant beasts, Sarcosuchus lowered his head and began to sniff like a wolf. It should be brought to notice that Sarcosuchus' sense of smell was exceptionally acute. He could easily distinguish a myriad of scents in the air. His sense of smell was not inferior to even the transcendent storm wolf. Furthermore, Sarcosuchus' sense of smell held an incredible ability. It was just that Sarcosuchus rarely displayed it. Thus, even Uzu was not entirely aware of its full capabilities. It should be someone skilled in hiding. This individual is very cautious. He even eliminated the scents from the air. Slowly raising his head, Sarcosuchus' gaze became somewhat serious. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked at Bull Demon and asked, "How's Orus?" "I've already used the life essence left by Divine Tree, so there's no immediate danger to his life, but he remains unconscious." "Very well." Nodding, Sarcosuchus fell into silence. Then he heaved a sigh and stated, "In any case, Orus probably would not have been able to help either. The fact that the assailant erased even their scent suggests that they came prepared." At this point, the corner of Sarcosuchus' mouth lifted into a sneer as he added with disdain, a hint of sarcasm on his face, "Too bad. It seems like this person has underestimated the terror of the era of transcendence in us. Immediately afterward, a fearsome surge of energy erupted from Sarcosuchus with a thunderous boom, causing even the ground to quake. Then, visible to the naked eyes, a yellowish-brown aura gathered around his nostrils. Faintly, a mysterious power began to spread out. Well? Fourth brother. Amidst expressions of surprise, many mutant beasts became alert. Faintly, they all sensed that Sarcosuchus seemed to be using some terrifying ability, bringing a serious expression on their faces. Ultimate pursuit, followed by a cold and stern shout, a myriad of scents continued to pour in. At this moment, what no one could see was that as Sarcosuchus continued to inhale these scents, a series of images began to appear in his mind. Scents could speak. Even if one had erased their own scent, the other scent would expose this disappeared scent. This was an ability that Sarcosuchus had recently developed, ultimate pursuit. This ability granted him the power to reimagine the previous scenes in his mind relying on the tracking smells. And this was the most terrifying aspect of this ability. However, this ability placed a heavy burden on his mind. So, Sarcosuchus rarely used it to its full extent. But now, in order to find the unknown assailant, Sarcosuchus had no choice but to activate it. After a long while, as if sensing something, Sarcosuchus' pupils suddenly shrank. His mind was fixed on an image. It was the image of the forest with the outlines of Slytherin, Lupin, and Oris slowly emerging. But at this moment there appeared to be a blank part in the image that was the missing scent. Naturally, this blank part happened to be in the shape of a figure. In the world of scents, everything was composed of scents. Even if a creature erased its own scent, the reconstructed image formed from other scents would expose it due to the disappearance of one scent. This was the most terrifying aspect of Sarcosuchus' ultimate pursuit. At this moment, Sarcosuchus' gaze darkened as an imperceptible cold aura began to emanate from him. Who, man? Grinding his teeth, Sarcosuchus' gaze firmly fixed on the image in his mind. It was a silhouette of a human carrying a samurai sword on its back. As for the rest, Sarcosuchus could not discern. But that was enough. Because at that very moment, as the voice of Sarcosuchus resounded, furious roars echoed through a large part of Misty Mountains. It's the humans again. Humans again. Bull Demon clenched his fists tightly, boiling in anger. These guys have not only failed to learn from their previous mistakes, but they also dare to venture into Misty Mountains once more, and even kidnap Slytherin and Lupin. Divine Tree is right. Human greed knows no bounds and they constantly plot against our Misty Mountains. Thinking this, Bull Demon slowly stood up with a dark and fearsome look in his eyes. Then he took a step forward. Asterisk boom. Asterisk with the trembling of the earth, Bull Demon stood before a massive axe that was propped up. Divine Tree is absent. This old bull is responsible for everything. So, this old bull will do everything possible to bring Lupin and Slytherin back. Bull Demon stated in a resolute voice, as if he was making a solemn promise, swearing an oath. At the same time, an extremely chilling killing intent continued to emanate. His killing intent was as sharp and piercing as a blade and exceptionally cold. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 289, The Outbreak of Beast Tide. At this moment, a figure was dashing through the forest at an incredible speed. Faster, faster, faster. Muttering in an anxious voice, this diminutive figure, feeling the fearsome aura approaching from behind, could not help but shudder. No wonder China has designated this place a forbidden zone and it's feared by the public. This place is just too terrifying. An endless number of transcendent mutant beasts is one thing, but why are the transcendent mutant beasts here several times stronger than in other places? And what is up with that sky-piercing murderous intent? It even tore straight through the mist. My heart nearly stopped. Damn it. Wasn't there only that one monstrous tree in Misty Mountains that we needed to fear? Wasn't everything else not worth mentioning? Why are there so many transcendent mutant beasts? Each a catastrophe? Thinking of this, Shun Sato turned slightly pale. Fortunately, he was a ninja from Japan with an ancient lineage and his mastery of stealth had reached a state of perfection. Not to mention these mutant beasts, even in China few could detect him. However, at this moment as he thought about something, Shun Sato looked at a peculiar snake in his right hand. It had 3 heads, each exuding an aura of a different element. It was such that his gaze even became fiery, as if he had seen something incredible. Yamada no Orochi. A Yamada no Orochi. Shun Sato kept muttering the same time over and over again, fully revealing what was on his mind. According to Japanese legends, Yamada no Orochi was the most infamous evil god, a fierce giant serpent with 8 heads and 8 tails, known for its immense power and terror, deeply rooted in the culture of the entire Japan. Just as the 9-tailed fox was a famous mythological creature in China, Yamada no Orochi was equally renowned in China. What was even more significant was that, due to the immense power and terror of the Yamada no Orochi, some in Japan believed in it and were willing to feed themselves to it. Shun Sato happened to be a devoted believer of Yamada no Orochi. He had come with a Japanese delegation to China for negotiations and to seek China's support. During their conversation, he came to know about the terrifying nature of Misty Mountains and, unable to resist his curiosity, ventured into Misty Mountains to explore. Specifically, not to mention Chinese officials, but even within his own delegation very few were aware of this. Then, much to Shun Sato's delight, he discovered the reincarnation of Yamada no Orochi in the depths of Misty Mountains. Yes, it must be its reincarnation. Just as the Chinese had the concept of ancient wisdom, Japanese believed that terrifying beings from the legends could awaken in this era of transcendence. The vessel for their awakening was the so-called reincarnation. As such, Shun Sato believed this fearsome little snake with 3 heads, each and exuding different elemental auras, to be the reincarnation of the most infamous disaster god of Japanese mythology, Yamada no Orochi. He believed that if it could be fully awakened, Japan, which was on the brink of desperation, would gain true hope. According to legend, Yamada no Orochi was an extremely powerful monster, but it was said that it protected the entire Japan. While this reincarnation was just in Tier 0, it was already showing its potential. If properly nurtured, it would undoubtedly be able to save Japan from its dire straits. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Sato's eyes flickered with obvious excitement, and he even broke into a mad dash, running several times faster. Sato was incredibly fast. He was a ninja, an inheritor of a rare ancient profession. He inherited the legacy due to his innate talent being related to shadows, and also because when his country was on the brink of destruction, he toiled really hard and achieved some merit. Now, as a Tier 1 superhuman, he could easily deal with most Tier 2 individuals. His uncanny techniques, coupled with his incredible speed, made him seem like a phantom. And now, maintaining a terrifying speed, he was heading toward the nearest city to Misty Mountains, Sunset City. It should be brought to notice that Sunset City was not originally named Sunset City, but after the Dark Day many Chinese cities underwent reconstruction. In celebration of their rebirth and to welcome a new era, many cities were renamed, and Sunset City was one of them. The name was chosen to symbolize basking in the afterglow. Suddenly, Sato's face went pale, as if he had sensed something horrifying. As he looked back, he could not help but notice continuous vibrations coming from the vast and ancient forest. Even more terrifying was the deep and resonant roars that seemed to be coming from ancient times, reverberating through the sky, one after another. For a moment, the entire world seemed to be shaking. How is this possible? Sato's face turned pale. He could not understand why these terrifying beasts of Misty Mountains would start moving in unison. Isn't it just 2 young beasts? How did these creatures know which direction I'm running towards? Damn it! Growling, Sato accelerated his already mad dash. As one of the 10 major cities of China after Reconstruction, Sunset City had formidable Tier 2 superhumans. Not to mention the well-trained city defense forces, there were towering fortifications that left him awestruck. He believed that with such robust defenses, they would be able to keep these mutant beasts out. As for the death toll, it was not his concern. After all, once they had secured the resources from China, the Japanese delegation would return back to their home country. Why would he care about the life and death of others, much less those not of his homeland? However, what Sato did not know at this time was that China and Misty Mountains had a long-standing, irreconcilable feud. And now, his actions had acted like a fuse, igniting this feud like a powder keg. Humans and beasts could never coexist. Only by expelling one side could the other side be able to gain the peace they longed for. And Misty Mountains, as the most organized force of mutant beasts in the entire China, no, the entire continent, would now reveal their true fangs for the first time without the shelter of the divine tree, showing the world the true face of unspoken terror. Roar, 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 the continuous roaring set off surging sound waves. One after another, terrifying behemoths, each like small mountains, broke through the thick fog and rushed toward Sunset City. Leading them was Old Fourth Sarcosuchus. He had already found the trace of Sato's aura. However, it was not just the terrestrial beasts. In the sky, screech, screech, high-pitched screeches tore through the vast sky as inferno birds, with wingspans of several meters, bathing in flames, cut through the sky and headed toward Sunset City. And they were not alone. Asterisk swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One after another, like bullets, the peregrine falcons darted through the air at lightning speed. Ashish, https://en. Wikipedia. org/wiki/yamada_no_roki. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 290, besieging the city. Boom, boom, boom. The earth trembled and the mountains seemed to cry out in sorrow. In the distance, a dust storm several tens of meters high could be seen. At this moment, sensing the tremors, the entire Sunset City trembled violently. What is going on? What are these vibrations? Am I dreaming? Isn't that a beast tide? Amidst a series of shocked exclamations, countless people were alarmed. But faster than them were the city defense forces directly under the mayor, known as the Black Armor Army. Asterisk boom, 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 accompanied by the outpouring of one black-clad figure after another, the towering city walls were now filled with numerous cold and stern figures. The city's defense force, the Black Armor Army of Sunset City, had been lavishly formed by the mayor, having a staggering total strength of 30,000. Furthermore, the lowest threshold to join was Tier 0 Level 7. The captains needed to be at Tier 0 Level 8 or above. If not for the second round of spiritual energy tide, it would have been near impossible to gather so many superhumans to form an army. What made them terrifying was that every black armor soldier wore metal armor and wielded cold weapons, which allowed them to confront mutant beasts of the same level head-on without falling behind. In addition to the Black Armor Army, countless heavy weapons were installed on the towering walls. It could be said that the city's defenses were more than 10 times stronger than before. This was a lesson learned from the Dark Day incident. Since then, the Chinese government began training the entire population martial arts and even treated the superhumans more favorably. As such, even a city became capable of deploying elite troops in tens of thousands. Furthermore, Sunset City happened to be one of the top 10 major cities in the rebuilt China. Not only was it home to millions of people, it was also the home to some of the most advanced technology in the world. Moreover, the mayor was a rare Tier 2 superhuman. In terms of combat strength, only a few cities in China could compare. And now, such a formidable city, like a well-oiled machine, was slowly awakening. Faster, faster. Accompanied by the shouts of a captain-level black armor soldier, more black armor soldiers poured like a black wave towards the city walls. Beneath the inner wall, one could see a constant stream of military vehicles emerging from deep within the city. Sunset City, South Military District. Sunset City, North Military District. Sunset City, East Military District. Sunset City, West Military District. Sunset City had been amassing this military force all along, essentially turning the entire city into an army. Moreover, since the Dark Day, they had already faced off against Beast Tide on more than one occasion, although they had all been small-scale ones. A large-scale Beast Tide like the current one was something they had never encountered. Because at this moment, slowly lifting their gazes, they could see tall clouds of dust billowing at the horizon. The clouds of dust rose so high that they seemed to have blanketed the sky. The momentum of the Beast Tide was even more formidable and terrifying than the Beast Tide on the Dark Day. Because roars coming from this terrifying Beast Tide made countless black armor soldiers feel uneasy. Transcendent mutant beasts, inexplicable murmurs echoed on the city walls, causing the faces of many black armor soldiers to change slightly. Transcendent mutant beasts were not as simple as one might imagine. Each transcendent mutant beast could conquer a small county on its own. Their strength could be described in just one word: terrifying. Yet now, much to their dismay, not just one such terrifying mutant beasts were coming at them. This, not to mention the black armor soldiers, even the captains and commander-level individuals were showing some uneasiness. However, just then, a man's face suddenly changed as he looked at the huge silhouettes emerging at the horizon. Impossible. This can't be. Muttering to himself, the man's face underwent a significant change. "What's wrong, Li Si?" Sensing this man's unusual reaction, several other soldiers stood beside him, looked at him and asked suspiciously, their bodies surging with a fearsome aura. One of them even mocked, "Commander Li Si, you aren't scared, are you? Rest assured, our Sunset City is not like your old Maple Leaf City. We may not be invulnerable, but we're not so easy a target as your city that you average Tom, Dick, and Harry could come and crush it." Listening to this man's sneer, Li Si remained silent, clenching his fists tightly. However, after a moment, as if trying to confirm something, he looked at the approaching beast tide in the sky before stating in a low voice, "If that's true, then we'll give it a try. After all, it seems this beast tide is coming directly from Misty Mountains." Misty Mountains? What? As if they had heard a terrifying word, the faces of all the commanders changed drastically. As for the one who had mocked, he froze before looking into the distance with incredulity. "You're not lying, are you? Are they really from Misty Mountains?" "Yes, no doubt about it. They are from Misty Mountains." Nodding, Li Si responded with certainty. Then he pointed to the most terrifying silhouettes on both sides of the approaching beast tide and explained, "Those should be Mammoth and Pteranodon. I will never forget these two. These two trampled over the entire Maple Leaf City without any effort using their iron feet." Gulp, gulp, swallowing hard, even the one who had been sneering fell silent at this moment. Misty Mountains was a taboo subject in China. Their mystery and dread were known to all. Although rarely seen, they acted only once, taking over Maple Leaf City of China without much effort and even pressuring a highly regarded general of China to surrender himself. It was a disgrace. An absolute disgrace. However, even though it was known to be China's greatest disgrace, few dared to speak about it. Because it was Misty Mountains, a forbidden zone among the forbidden zones. The most mysterious and terrifying place, with a transcendent tree monster presiding over it. In the face of that tree monster, not only Sunset City but even the majority of China combined would find it difficult to contend against. But that was not the most frightening part. What was truly terrifying was a rumor, according to which, even China's most powerful weapon, nuclear weapons, failed to inflict significant damage on the tree monster. It did not even lay a scratch. And when these rumors were circulating, no one among the top officials in the Chinese government came forward to refute them. One could imagine the impact this has had on countless citizens. Monstrous beings capable of withstanding nuclear weapons have actually appeared. Oh yeah. Exhaling a long, deep breath and suppressing the shock in his heart, one of the commanders ordered with a serious expression, "Immediately inform the mayor and deputy mayor that this might be a beast tide from Misty Mountains." "Sir, yes, sir." Immediately responding, several black armor soldiers saluted before heading toward the city center, where the enigmatic mayor of Sunset City and the two deputy mayors were residing. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 291, United as One. Overwhelming battle spirit. Roar, roar, roar. With each roar and growl, the beast tide drew closer and closer. On a closer look, one would be able to make out the outlines of terrifying mutant beasts gradually appearing within the rising dust clouds. However, to the astonishment of the black armor soldiers stationed atop the high wall, the fearsome beast tide slowed its pace as it neared the city wall. It was only when it was about 3 to 4 kilometers away from the mighty city wall that it came to a halt, as though waiting for something. Soon, the dust clouds began to disperse, revealing one gigantic mutant beast after another. These mutant beasts emerging from the dust were not like the ordinary ones faced by Sunset City. These mutant beasts looked far more scary than they had faced until now. On one end of the tide stood a beast that resembled a mammoth, towering dozens of meters high, appearing like a small mountain. On the other end stood a creature whose size rivaled the mammoth, but it was a monstrous dinosaur. A living and breathing dinosaur. Its whip-like tail swayed in the air, kicking up a cloud of dust with its every move. Its entire body seemed to be covered in a thick suit of armor, giving it a fearsome appearance. Every once in a while, its gaping maws would open and blood would drip from it. It was a Pteranodon, an overlord from the Cretaceous period, a terrifying atavistic beast. There was no need for anyone to remind them of how fearsome these creatures were. Just by looking at the creatures that were almost as tall as the city wall, many well-trained black armor soldiers could not help but have the corners of their eyes twitch uncontrollably. Some even went completely pale, Ruhar. Suddenly, a deafening resonant roar reverberated across the sky, shaking the entire world. The ear-piercing roar sent shivers down the spines of the residents of Sunset City. The city's inhabitants felt as if they were witnessing the emergence of a ferocious beast that could bring an end to the world. However, this was not the most terrifying part. The most frightening aspect was that such colossal beasts were standing shoulder to shoulder like soldiers. And in the midst of these giants, even more terrifying mutant beasts slowly emerged one after another. For instance, a beast not particularly as tall as Mammoth and Pteranodon, but similar in size walked out slowly from the horde. It was another most fearsome existence, Sarcosuchus, ranked fourth among the 9 great beasts. Another such beast was a massive white tiger about 4 to 5 meters tall. Except this white tiger had a pair of terrifying wings like dragon wings on its back. Sarcosuchus and a white tiger with wings, murmuring, many of the black armor soldiers could not help but shudder. And right at that very moment. Asterisk thump, thump, thump. Accompanied by thunderous footsteps, continuous tremors passed through the ground. Hand over Slytherin and Lupin. Otherwise, we shall bathe this city in blood today. Every word was uttered with a tremendous force resonating throughout the entire sky. Never mind the black armor soldiers standing atop the city wall, even the residents of the city heard it clearly. And as these words shook their eardrums, a humanoid figure emerged from the beast tide. The calm expressions on everyone's faces could not be maintained any longer. Even the 3 enigmatic figures standing at the peak of the city wall had their faces changed drastically. A humanoid mutant beast. How is this possible? Amidst the astonished exclamations, Mayor Nie Yuan and the 2 deputy mayors, Deputy Mayor Gu and Deputy Mayor Ling, stared at the creature emerging from the distance. This colossal being, standing at a towering 3 to 4 meters, possessed the body similar to a human and the head of a bull, wielding a massive axe. The sight of it left them utterly dumbfounded. Is this even possible? Mutant beasts evolving to have a humanoid form? This can't be true. Are my eyes deceiving me? Is it possible that the rumors about mythical creatures coming to life are not just rumors? Nonetheless, now was not the time for astonishment, as a cold and fearsome killing intent spread through the sky. I don't want to say it again. Speaking in a grim voice, the bull-headed humanoid raised its massive axe high. After a moment, with a deafening roar, the axe struck the ground. Following that, much to the shock of numerous black armor soldiers, a crack several dozen meters long appeared, spreading toward the towering city wall. What was even more terrifying was that this abyss-like fissure grew wider and wider as it approached the city wall. By the time it was close to the wall, it had expanded to over 10 meters in width. The sight of it was completely horrifying. Even the imposing city wall started trembling. Obviously, in front of this terrifying power that cracked the earth, the towering city walls were just like a papier-mâché. Just at that moment, as if sensing this, a figure promptly jumped down the city wall. The next moment, a burst of spiritual energy surged from the figure as it drove the saber in its hand into the ground with force. With a swoosh, a waterfall of spiritual energy several dozen meters tall rose from the ground. The next moment, a deafening roar reverberated through the sky as the crack came to an abrupt halt. However, when everyone's attention turned toward the base of the city wall, Mayor Nie, the one they regarded as the strongest in the city, left a 20-meter-long trench in the ground as he slid. Except, what others failed to notice was the wound that had appeared on the enigmatic Mayor Nie's hand. Had he not promptly inserted his hand into his sleeve and sealed the wound with spiritual energy, his disheveled state would have been revealed before everyone's eyes. Yurf! An imperceptible gasp escaped Mayor Nie Yuan's lips as he looked at the nearby monstrous figure, his pupils shrinking to the size of pinpricks. What terrifying power! What's more, this seemed to have been just a casual swing. If it used its full strength. At this thought, Nie Yuan's heart sank slightly. Nonetheless, he had no choice but to step up. Taking a step forward, he used his spiritual energy and called out loudly, "Sir, since you already possess intelligence, why don't we talk about this?" Talk. A cold smile appeared on Bull Demon's lips as he tightened his grip on the enormous axe, and stated in a grim voice once more, "Hand over Lupin and the Slytherin, and we will naturally withdraw." Lupin. Slytherin? Nie Yuan was lost in thoughts, confused. Judging by their names, these 2 mutant beasts, one could possibly be a wolf and the other a snake? But hand over? Could it be that someone had ventured into Misty Mountains and captured these 2 mutant beasts without my consent? Thinking of this, Nie Yuan turned around slowly and asked in a cold voice, "Do any of you know anything about this?" "No, we don't." Everyone shook their heads in unison, a puzzled look on everyone's face, including the commanders and both deputy mayor. However, at that moment, a cold voice suddenly reverberated on top of the high wall. "Sir, why are you negotiating with these mutant beasts?" Saying so, one of the commanders raised his sword and spoke in a voice filled with hatred. "We have an irreconcilable blood feud with these beasts. We and the mutant beasts will have to fight one day." And just as he finished speaking, war cries echoed on the city wall, one after another. "Fight! Fight!" Everyone shouted in unison, showing their unity and determination. The entire crowd was outraged. However, there was no denying that these black armor soldiers had the strength to back up their confidence. Furthermore, they had already resisted the beast tide several times. They were not afraid of the mutant beasts. Every time they saw one, all that came into their mind was to fight. After all, many of them had lost family members and loved ones to mutant beasts. This deep-seated grudge had already filled these black armor soldiers and a large portion of humanity with hatred toward mutant beasts. In the past they were powerless, living in fear and dread. But now they have grown stronger. They did fear anything anymore. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 292, attacking the city. However, what no one knew at this moment was the terrifying nature of the beast tide they were facing. More importantly, how terrifying a beast tide was when it had something called discipline. Fight? Hearing the distant unified shouts, Bull Demon's face turned ice cold, and the muscles of his thick arms became taut, causing his veins to bulge like serpents. Abducting Slytherin and Lupin was one thing. Even after gathering at the city gates, Bull Demon was inclined to withdraw his troops. However, humans were unwilling to negotiate and instead sought war. Great, great, great. Bull Demon broke into a furious laughter as he muttered to himself, "Since you want war, I will give you war." His voice was filled with bone-chilling killing intent. Then Bull Demon slowly raised his head, looking toward the sky. Kill them until everyone is trembling in fear. If Divine Tree blames us, I will bear the entire responsibility alone. Hearing Bull Demon's voice, many of the mutant beasts had subtle changes in their expressions. However, before they could say anything, roar! A tiger's roar reverberated across the sky like a clap of thunder. Immediately after, White Tiger spread his snow-white wings and soared into the sky. Roar! After another tiger's roar filled with a fiendish aura, White Tiger's voice echoed across the sky. "Inferno birds, heed my command. Kill them all." "Yes," a unified reply echoed before, much to the horror of countless black armor soldiers, the horizon was engulfed in a blazing red hue, as if clouds of flame had suddenly materialized. On closer inspection, four colossal mutant birds with wingspans spanning dozens of meters could be seen flapping their wings deep within the clouds. At the same time, a tremendous amount of fire attribute spiritual energy started gathering at the horizon. Sensing the increasingly dense fire attribute spiritual energy, the expressions of the Black Armor Army commanders and even the deputy mayors changed dramatically. "This is bad. Quick! Retreat!" As one warning after another rang, the faces of the others also changed dramatically. Just because in the next moment, fireballs rained down from the sky, like a meteor shower, heading straight for the tall city walls. Meteor firestorm. Flapping their wings, inferno birds could gather fire element spiritual energy from the sky and instantly convert that part of the sky into a sea of fire. However, this was not the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was that the four inferno birds unleashed the meteor firestorm together, and their combined might was not as simple as 1 + 1. In the beginning, when all 7 inferno birds flew together, the combined sea of fire they created stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. Currently, although there were only 4 inferno birds, their strength was not what it used to be. Although the meteor firestorm was not as powerful as when all 7 unleashed it together, it was almost on par with it. At this moment, the sky and ground was dyed in a fiery red color, and fireballs the size of a human head struck the city wall in succession. Boom, boom, boom. One deafening explosion after another rang, causing the towering city wall to continuously shake as if it were in the midst of an artillery fire. However, the more horrifying were the screams that could be heard all over the city walls. "No, no. Save me, save me." Heart-wrenching screams filled the city walls as countless people lit up in flames. However, they did not struggle for long. Their scorched corpses just fell to the ground one after another. At the end of the day, the flames of these transcendent inferno birds were simply too terrifying, far beyond the capabilities of these Tier 0 humans to withstand. While this kind of big move would also temporarily exhaust the transcendent inferno birds, it was enough for Bull Demon and White Tiger. Foul Eye, destroy the city wall. Gazing at the towering city wall now engulfed in flames, a cold gleam flashed in White Tiger's eyes. He then turned his attention to several peregrine falcons that were already prepared and gave the command. Yes, immediately after, the peregrine falcons began to spin, boom boom boom. With each rotation, 5 storms visible to the naked eyes began to surge. What was even more terrifying was that these 5 storms grew bigger as the falcons spun, eventually forming dozens of meters-wide tornadoes that charged toward the city wall. Stop them. One of the deputy mayors, noticing the oncoming tornadoes, suddenly shouted. Then he leaped up in the air. However, before he could get closer, a deafening tiger's roar shook everyone's eardrum. The next moment, White Tiger transformed into a streak of white light, shooting straight toward him. Boom. With a deafening clap, a powerful surge of spiritual energy spread outward, stirring up fearsome gales. Looking from a distance, a small mushroom-shaped shockwave rose up. Simultaneously, within the formidable tempest, White Tiger's claws gleamed with a bright white light. Die! White Tiger swung his paw at this deputy mayor with a force of 1,000 kilograms, sending the deputy mayor flying before he could even react, like a kite with a broken string. And at that very moment, screech, 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 accompanied by high-pitched screeches, enormous tornadoes were about to fall on the high wall. They were fast, incredibly fast. And while they were fast, they were breathtakingly powerful. Although a few of the commanders had sensed the oncoming danger in time, their resistance proved futile in the face of the fierce attacks unleashed by these mutant birds. They were not called the rulers of the sky for nothing. When it came to individual combat capability, even the inferno birds would pale in comparison to the peregrine falcons. This demonstrated the sheer terror of these peregrine falcons. Boom, 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 amidst a series of explosions, the tornadoes and the towering city walls came into contact. The towering city wall began to crack. It revealed ever-expanding cracks that resembled a spider's web, which kept spreading. After a while, the city wall could no longer endure, and with a deafening crash, sections of the city walls shattered into pieces, raining down bits and pieces of rubble. Meanwhile, the other mutant beasts did not remain idle either. Boom, 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 accompanying fearsome tremors, a visible black torrent surged toward the city wall. More importantly, the mutant beast leading the stampede charged forward with the ferocity of a train. Barbaric charge. As his spiritual energy surged, armored wild boar kept going faster and faster, ultimately transforming into a black streak of light with an irresistible momentum. His tough, scale-like hide effectively blocked all attacks against him. At this moment, not to mention stopping armored wild boar, the mere sight of his charge caused the corners of many commander-level humans' eyes to involuntarily twitch. However, their attention quickly turned to the other 2 figures. One had turned into a streak of lightning, tracing a Z shape across the battlefield. By the time others realized it, a lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket had already struck the city wall. Lightning strike, muttering, Honey Badger's gaze grew colder, while his right claw stretched out from the lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket. Swoosh, a commander, before he could even react, was sent flying, with an incredulous look on his face. How can it move so quickly? As a voice filled with disbelief rang, Honey Badger's figure appeared behind the now flabbergasted individual. Boom! Honey Badger's spiritual energy surged as his gleaming claws aimed for the commander's throat. However, after a moment, as if he had discovered something, Honey Badger's lips curled into a mocking smile. The next moment, his figure turned blurry as he disappeared from everyone's sight. Where did it go? Another commander, who was preparing to ambush the Honey Badger with his saber, cried in astonishment with a bewildered look on his face. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 293, Mutant Beasts Unlike Anything Before. The next moment, zapping sounds filled the air as silver-white electrical arcs cut through the air. Lightning resonance. As a soft and cold murmur left Honey Badger's lips, the air within a radius of 100 meters trembled violently. After a moment, much to the commander's disbelief, an astonishing silver glow blinded everyone's sight. Asterisk boom. Asterisk with a deafening boom, the entire area within 100 meters of Honey Badger turned into a world of lightning, completely filled with electrical discharges. Lightning resonance. The Honey Badger's deep mastery of lightning allows him to manipulate the electromagnetic forces in the air, turning an area into a sea of lightning. It was an extremely horrifying technique that did not discriminate between friend and foe. However, this kind of move was simply perfect to be used right in the middle of the enemy's army. The next moment, dozens of black armor soldiers fell to the ground, charred, while 3 commanders appeared pale, desperately resisting the lightning. While the commanders fought to withstand the lightning, a streak of golden light raced across the air. Looking up, it was surprisingly a golden monkey wielding a long staff charging straight at them. "I'll take them." Grinning, Golden Monkey tightened his grip on the staff. The next moment, with a loud crash, his staff mercilessly struck one of the commanders. Asterisk blurg. Asterisk a painful groan escaped the commander's lips as a sharp bout of pain shot from his abdomen. He was unable to bear the brunt and spat a mouthful of blood, gasping for breath. This was the result of 2 generals attacking in a team. They had taken out a superhuman with minimal effort. Furthermore, they had done it in passing. In fact, their real mission was to tear apart the battlefield and create chaos for more mutant beasts to charge in. But what they did was already more than enough. Looking back, they saw the tide of mutant beasts crashing straight into the towering city walls. Immediately, sounds of combat and screams filled the air. However, most of the wails and screams belonged to the humans, only because the entire battlefield was divided by powerful mutant beasts. And the towering city walls, upon which humans relied upon, were now swaying like a leaf in a storm. If my calculation is right, as if realizing something, Golden Monkey's playful gaze fell on a nearby spot, where the Pteranodon, Mammoth, Tundra, and Sarcosuchus were charging. By the time Fourth Brother arrives, the entire city wall will likely collapse. Golden Monkey chuckled before paying no attention to it. The first order of business is to keep these humans in check. Thinking this, he raised his long staff and charged into the crowd. This. How is this possible? Are you kidding me? Is this the kind of strength that mutant beasts can have? The black armor soldiers, as well as many commanders and deputy mayors, cried in shock, their faces filled with alarm. The entire battle was completely one-sided. The humans' most formidable heavy weapons that were hidden within the depths of the city walls were submerged in the sea of fire without even being able to unleash their power. By the time the humans finally reacted, several storms descended one after another. Their tall walls were nearly destroyed under this continuous and terrifying assault. However, that wasn't the most important aspect. What was even more crucial was the fact that the Black Armor Army's strength that they were confident about had become insignificant in the face of these mutant beasts. In the past, they were able to take on mutant beasts of the same level one-on-one without falling leeward. However, now, in just a brief encounter when facing the mutant beasts of the same level, they were either sent flying or in the process of being sent flying. What was even more frightening were the terrifying transcendent creatures hiding within the horde of mutant beasts. Their strength far surpassed those of the same level, making them nearly invincible. Even the commanders, who were not much weaker than them, struggled to hold their ground against these formidable foes. This was totally unacceptable even to the 2 deputy mayors, let alone the most mysterious figure, Mayor Nyeyuan himself. The Black Armor Army, the force they were most confident in, became so fragile in the face of this beast tide. Yet not that long ago they were chasing the beast tide and slaughtering them. As if sensing Nyeyuan's incredulity, a burly figure slowly emerged from the horde of beasts. Thump, 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 accompanied by heavy steps and imposing pressure enveloped Nyeyuan. Wearing a scornful smile, a minotaur-like creature holding a huge axe entered Mayor Nyeyuan's sight. "You thought we were ordinary mutant beasts?" Coldly chuckling, a flickering black sheen shimmered on the bull demon's right arm. After a moment, boom. As Bull Demon raised his giant axe, an immense force descended toward Mayor Nyeyuan. Nevertheless, the thing that shocked Nyeyuan the most was that, faced with this giant axe, his body seemed to be out of his control, becoming a few more times heavier. Gravity suppression. By controlling gravity, its user can increase the gravity of an area, allowing its user to suppress even his opponents of the same level. A sound akin to shattering of glass rang as the giant axe fiercely swung toward Nyeyuan, shattering even the space. While a fearsome war was raging outside Sunset City, several figures quietly rose from the ground within the walls. Surprisingly, it was none other than the sculpture-looking Qing Gang Thorns, whose body was covered in leaves like clothing, making her look quite sexy and stunning, and the slim and cold Lung Feng. In addition to these three, there was Golden Ant, no taller than a fist, perched on Qing Gang's shoulder. Their objective was to find Lupin and Slytherin within the city while war raged outside. Even during a war, they could not lose sight of their ultimate goal. Can you locate Lupin and Slytherin? Qing Gang lowered his head and looked at Golden Ant with a serious look in his eyes. In a critical moment like this, every minute was equal to the death of one or even multiple mutant beasts. Such sacrifices were totally unacceptable to them. Yes. Nodding, Golden Ant's antennae stood erect. Then, as if it sensed something, his two golden-red antennae pointed in a direction. Seeing this, Qing Gang and the others moved without a moment of delay. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They instantly transformed into several streaks of light, rushing toward the western side of Sunset City. Meanwhile, in the western part of Sunset City, a group of people were hurrying along. Hurry, hurry. If we don't move faster, we won't make it in time. Looking back at the towering flames behind them, Sato was now in a state of shock. He had no idea that the mutant beasts of Misty Mountains would be so terrifying, and when they said they would start a war, they really meant it. Judging by the fearsome display of their power, all Sato could do was pray that Sunset City could hold on for a few more minutes. I know. The members of the Japanese delegation nodded repeatedly, a grave look on their faces. However, every time they glanced at the two metallic boxes in their convoy, a hint of ecstasy flickered deep within their eyes. They never expected that Sato's risky venture into Misty Mountains would yield such an opportunity. If they brought back the reincarnation of Yamada no Orochi, the entire nation could be saved. As for taming the reincarnation, it would not be a problem for them. After all, there was no shortage of humans with the talent to tame mutant beasts. Although they could only tame weaker mutant beasts with their transcendent strength, it should not be difficult for them to tame a mutant beast that was only at tier 0. As these thoughts flashed in their minds, the delegation's eyes grew fervent. After a moment, vroom vroom vroom. With the start of each armored vehicle, the entire convoy was now ready. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 294, Interception. While the Japanese delegation was getting ready to leave, ladies and gentlemen, were under attack. Please return to your rooms. Requesting a cold voice, a team of Chinese officials stopped the Japanese delegation. They were responsible for attending the Japanese delegation. While it was to look after them, to some extent it was also to keep an eye on them. And now, as the beast tide was attacking Sunset City, the fact that the Japanese were trying to withdraw brought a disdainful look on the Chinese officials' faces. The captain of the team advised once again. Please return to your room. Return? Murmuring, dozens of members of the Japanese delegation glanced at each other in silence. After a moment, cold gleams flashed through the air. Swish! The next moment, with the tearing sounds akin to a cloth being ripped, the Chinese officials had their throats slit as a bloody line appeared on their necks. Let's go. We have no other choice but to do this, for the reincarnation of Yamada no Orochi. Listening to Sato's words, everyone fell silent for a moment. They had no idea if they had made the right choice or not, but considering that their homeland was still in a dire straits, this seemed to be the best course of action. As such, they were left with no other choice. The reincarnation of Yamada no Orochi must be brought back to Japan. And for this, they were ready to give and take lives if needs be. And if the Chinese government asks, as if thinking of something, a tinge of helplessness appeared on Sato's face before he sighed and added, if the Chinese government finds out, I will go to them and apologize personally. The faces of everyone slightly stiffened, but after a moment, no one refuted. It was not like the old days. China was no longer the same as before. Its strength and terror are far beyond what their small nation could compare to. More importantly, in this era of transcendence, all countries were preoccupied managing their own affairs, and the so-called international treaties had long become worthless pieces of paper. If China was not afraid of having a bad name, it would most likely have suppressed Japan by now. Naturally, it was all the more reason Japan could not provide China with an excuse to exploit them. However, this time the reincarnation of Yamada no Orochi was just too important, so Sato had no choice but to take this course of action. Let's go. Hurry. Yes. Responding in unison, the entire convoy set off as night approached. However, shortly after their departure, whoosh whoosh whoosh, with swishing sounds of something rapidly moving through the air, several terrifying figures arrived. Touching the still warm bodies, Lung Feng spoke, "They probably haven't gone far." "Great." Qin Gang nodded, feeling a bit relieved. But after a while, as if realizing something, Qin Gang was surprised. Why are these guys even targeting the military? I guess they might be part of some illegal organization. They could be smugglers. After pondering for a moment, Thorns explained. In the past, she used to roam in gray markets, and naturally knew some of the inside information. For instance, in this era, some mercenary groups might have set their sights on mutant cubs. This kind of mutant cubs could not only be used for taming their pets, but could also be used as delicacies for cultivation. With so many benefits, it was natural that someone would target them. However, these smugglers definitely did not expect to stir up such a big mess. If the mayor of Sunset City found out that they were the cause of the outbreak of Beast Tide, he would not merely punish them. Rather, he would make sure that they would not live to see another day. After all, the current era was not the same as before. Human lives were completely insignificant. Nobody would really care about the disappearance of one or two people every now and then. In light of these situations, when push comes to shove, people may resort to desperate measures. However, it never occurred to Thorns that the smugglers might have other identities. Late at night, the night sky was even deeper and colder under the moonlight. At this moment, in a suburban area, piercing screams deep within the woods broke the serenity of the night. "No, no, run, run. You bastards, stop them. You guys take the divine beasts and run. We'll cover you." Amidst shrill cries, dozens of figures in samurai attire glared at the three approaching figures in the depths of the forest with bloodshot eyes. These three figures were very strange. One looked like a statue, one was covered with leaves, and the other was dressed in black. Furthermore, no one was able to stop these three peculiar figures. Already, over a dozen samurai, armed with katana, had attacked them. However, looking at the blood-stained ground on either side of the trio, the samurai staining the ground on both sides, one by one, the samurai stared at the three approaching figures in disbelief. The dancing blood vines, like the most deadly venomous snakes, weaved through the entire forest, spreading their terror and chill throughout the woods. Putting everything aside, just the terrifying and intense murderous intent alone suffocated the entire Japanese delegation. At this moment, without anyone needing to remind them, the entire delegation knew they were in deep trouble, and not just any ordinary trouble. Ha! Taking a deep breath, the three leaders of the delegation stepped forward. They were from the Yagyu clan, the most influential samurai clan in Japan, and also the few superhumans in the group. And now, the three of them stepped forward without hesitation. One of them turned back and instructed a pale Sato in a resigned voice, "Sato, take the divine beasts and run. The faster the better. These three are definitely not humans. Even we can only delay them for a while." The great elder of the Musashi clan stared at the three approaching figures, his pupils narrowing to the size of a pin needle while his right hand gently stroked the hilt of his katana. Humph! A cold snort rang as fearsome murderous intent spread like a tide. "I didn't expect that you guys were the one who kidnapped Lupin and Slytherin." As Qin Gang spoke, a chilling undertone laced his voice, and his gaze grew even colder. While China and Japan were both human territories, every wrong had its cause and every debt had its debtor. As such, ultimately someone had to pay for targeting Misty Mountains. As such, there was no room for mediation, the only option left was to fight. "Are you also from Misty Mountains?" As if realizing something, the elder of the Yagyu clan held some astonishment. However, no one answered. The only response he received was the shaking of the earth. Boom, boom, boom. Like a tide, the soil rose to heights of tens of meters, crashing toward the Japanese delegation one after another. Clearly, Qin Gang was determined to kill them. Just then, a small figure silently dashed into the depths of the night. "You want to escape?" Lung Feng roared as his face turned cold and dark. The next moment, his figure transformed into a streak of black light, but before he could rush any further, swoosh. A snow-white gleaming blade blocked his path. On the other side, Thorns, who was also prepared to charge out, was also intercepted by another figure with a katana. "You're planning to stop us even if it means laying down your lives?" A cold smile flashed on Qin Gang's face. He did not seem to care about this. After all, Golden Ant was already hiding in the forest. Since the small figure fled into the forest, Golden Ant would naturally intercept him. However, looking at the frantic speed at which the small figure was running away, Qin Gang was a bit uncertain. I wonder if Golden Ant can catch up? Thinking this, Qin Gang's gaze turned even colder, looking at the few blocking their way. With these people obstructing them, they might not be able to give chase right away. After all, a few superhumans who were ready to lay down their lives would definitely be a bit difficult to deal with. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 295, The Legendary Units. Meanwhile, in a secret base of China. Boom boom boom. The ground shook as over 100 figures emerged from the depths of the ground through a large crack. Sunset City is facing the strongest beast tide we have ever seen. We need to go and support them. Sir, yes sir, a unified response shook the air, but the faces of over 100 people remained cold and stoic like machines. They did not just look like machines, they could really rival machines. They were the top 10 secret task forces of China, the Iron Man unit. Every single Iron Man underwent extensive modification, which deprived them of pain, and then went through a hellish training supported by extensive resources to strengthen their bodies. And that was how a fearsome task force was created. Although only a few of them were superhumans, the rest were significantly stronger than Tier 0 Level 9 experts. They could only be called pseudo-superhumans. Now, an elite squad from the Iron Man unit had received orders from their superiors to go for support. Fortunately, they were not too far from Sunset City. With their speed, 3 hours were more than enough. Thinking this, the commander in charge was the first to rush out. Boom. With a fearsome outburst of strength, coupled with their steel-like bodies, the commander shot out like a bullet. Subsequently, over 100 figures shot out one after another. Upon closer look, their speed was several times faster than a car. This was the Iron Man unit. Every Iron Man was unfazed by fatigue and unafraid of pain. If it was not for the fact that they could still think, they would be no different machines. Rumor had it the Iron Man unit was largest among the 10 secret task forces, but also the highest death rate. This was mainly because many Iron Men continued training even when they were already exhausted. By the time the test subjects realized it, they had lost their vital signs. Even so, their bodies remained unaffected like they were still alive, which was quite frightening. Meanwhile, near Sunset City, a group of terrifying figures had arrived. This group happened to be very peculiar. Each of them was human, but they possessed animal-like characteristics. For instance, a beautiful girl among the group had cat-like ears and a tail, making her look extremely cute and sexy. A man had a chest like a mutant chimpanzee, and his entire body was covered in dense black fur. This was the Geno Marine, another one of China's top 10 secret task forces. However, compared to the Iron Man unit, the Geno Marines pursued individual combat power more. Although they were only 8, each one was exuding an extremely aggressive aura no less inferior to the superhumans. The one leading them was dressed elegantly and was a familiar figure. It was none other than the vampire, Carrie, once the number 0 of the Geno Marines, an extremely dangerous monster. However, that was in the past. Now, he was the Empress, Miss Ling Air's servant, and he did not need to hold himself back anymore. Recently, he had secretly restarted the research of the Geno Marines, of course on his master's orders. More importantly, they had achieved the greatest breakthrough in the research of the Geno Marine. As per their master's orders, the genetically modified individuals no longer required to suppress themselves, but were guided more to embrace their animal instincts, following the law of nature, the survival of the strongest. As a result, these genetically modified individuals surrounding the vampire, Carrie, were filled with violence and brutality. In some ways they were even more terrifying than mutant beast. Moreover, what was even more important was that they never regarded themselves as humans. They referred to themselves as new humans or otherkin. This was the title they gave themselves, as they aimed to establish their own territory in the land of both mutant beasts and humans. For this, they did not mind obeying the orders of Carrie, just so that one day they could see the sunshine that truly belonged to them. After all, in their current state they were not accepted by humans, nor were they needed by mutant beasts. So, they had to form their own clique. "Boss, what should we do next?" Clenching his massive fists, the chimpanzee-modified human, the most burly among them, asked in a cold tone. Wait. Wait? Puzzled, the burly man also expressed confusion. Yes, wait. Carrie smiled and gazed deeply in the direction of Sunset City, explaining, this time Misty Mountains is on the move, the most terrifying force among the mutant beasts. This will definitely cause a stir throughout the entire China. As a result, some of the secret task forces may also take action. What we need to do is intercept them. By the way, it's an order from our master. The beast, who was about to raise an objection, fell silent upon hearing the word master. Regarding the master mentioned by Carrie, the mysterious woman shrouded in a black robe, all genetically modified individuals had a natural sense of reverence. She was a formidable entity they could not defy. Fortunately, this woman stood on their side as the leader of the otherkins. Otherwise, they would not even have the courage to betray China, let alone the human race. As such, they dare not disobey a single order issued by the master. However, as if realizing something, the Catwoman at the side suddenly licked her lips as a cold murderous intent flashed in her deep, enigmatic eyes. I wonder which task force will be arriving. As long as it's not those three, we're more than capable of suppressing the rest with our strength. Casually responding, Carrie was also praying in his heart. He hoped it would not be those three task forces. After all, among the top 10 secret units of the Federation, the top 3 task force and the rest were in completely different leagues in terms of combat strength. The current otherkins could only amount to 8th place. Thought, if their numbers increased, even the top 3 secret task force of China would be no match for them. However, both sides would suffer heavy losses. After all, those 3 task forces were absolutely terrifying. Whether it was their individual combat abilities or overall strength, both could not be underestimated. Among them, Carrie had the fortune of meeting one of those task forces with his master. The Iron Knights. One of the legendary secret task force, a blend of black and white, bathing in a sea of crimson. This is the terrifying unit that rode on pandas. Every well-trained Iron Knight rode a panda. And the combination of both human and beast was enough to create the most powerful charge that could tear through any defense. In close combat, riding a panda that was impervious to blades and spears made them even more fearsome. The Iron Knights were a formidable task force specializing in frontal assaults. Even a vampire like Carrie would find himself in a spot if he ran into them. In head-to-head battles or even 2 against 1, they were not to be underestimated. Their impeccable coordination was a game-changer. Additionally, the pandas were immune to various elemental attacks, and they possessed formidable physical strength. If they could fly, they might as well be considered legendary Dragon Knights. This was the legendary unit, Iron Knights, a formidable unit that even made their master Ling Er narrow her eyes in awe. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 296, Desert Storm / Meanwhile on the battlefield. Boom boom boom. With 3 terrifying impacts, the entire Sunset City shook ever so slightly as the towering city walls began to collapse. Retreat. Quickly. Retreat. It's too late, don't? How is this possible? The city walls also fell. Voices filled with disbelief filled the city as countless people lay witness to the once mighty city walls slowly collapsing to the ground. After a moment, the walls that were 20 to 30 meters high came down with a thunderous crash, raising a cloud of dust. And within the dust cloud, Ruhar. It sounded like a dragon's roar but far more ferocious. After a moment, a dinosaur, several tens of meters high, appeared in everyone's sight. A fearsome-looking dinosaur with a tail that swung through the air like a steel whip. This was the Pteranodon, one of the 9 great beasts, together with Old Seventh, the Mammoth, and Old Fourth, Sarcosuchus. These 3 behemoths had knocked down the city walls together. The term towering was relative. Before these 3 behemoths, even tall buildings seemed like paper, especially given the prior damage the city walls had suffered. And right at this very moment, kill! A fierce shout echoed across the sky. The next moment, the Pteranodon emerged from the cloud of dust, charging straight into the crowd. Apart from the formidable Black Armor army, there were many regular soldiers as well. Now, with the city walls collapsed, they were completely exposed. A deafening boom shook the city as the Pteranodon's hind legs cracked the ground, launching himself into the air. After a moment, much to the astonishment of countless onlookers, a fearsome shadow that covered the entire sky came crashing. No. No. Amidst shrill screams, Pteranodon stomped several ordinary black armor soldiers into the ground. Crack, crisp sounds of bones breaking rang as red color began to surface from underneath Pteranodon's feet. However, this was only the beginning. As if stimulated by the sight of blood, Pteranodon became even more violent and ferocious. His spiritual energy surged through his entire being like boiling water. Then Pteranodon opened his mouth. Ruhar, a deep and resonant roar reminiscent of ancient times reverberated, but with a blood-red glow in his throat, reverberated from deep within Pteranodon. The next moment, boom. A blood-red light beam as thick as a water barrel, shot out from Pteranodon's mouth, hitting countless people head-on before they could even react. Ah! No! Amidst the cacophony of miserable shrieks, the blood-red beam shredded them into pieces. And at this moment, if one were to look around the vicinity of the Pteranodon, they would see a crevice several tens of meters deep, left in the aftermath of the blood-red beam. Crimson Beam, by gathering a large amount of spiritual energy in his mouth, the Pteranodon can fire a highly concentrated beam as it roars. This was quite a terrifying technique. However, only atavistic mutant beasts with bodies incredibly strong could use it. If mutant beasts like White Tiger tried to attempt it, his throat would be left scorched as if burned by fire. Ultimately, he would have to give up activating it. Apart from Pteranodon, Sarcosuchus and Mammoth also possessed variations of this technique. However, this technique consumed a significant amount of spiritual energy and caused severe pain in its user's throat. As a result, the Sarcosuchus and Mammoth rarely chose to use this difficult and unrewarding technique. Except for Pteranodon, that was. For him, pain and discomfort were inconsequential. Only killing mattered. At this moment, the entire battlefield, besides Pteranodon's nearly crushing presence, was showing a one-sided suppression. In the face of the mutant beasts emerging from the heart of Misty Mountains, humanity was undoubtedly too weak. Even against the commander-level mutant beasts of Misty Mountains like Transcendent Azure Wolf and Transcendent Wild Boar, the superhumans could barely contend against them. This showed how powerful mutant beasts were compared to their human counterparts. However, one must not forget that Transcendent Azure Wolf and Wild Boar were just the bottom-level transcendents of Misty Mountains. There were 3 generals above them, above whom were top-tier transcendents of Misty Mountains, the 9 great beasts. Each of these great beasts was a cut above among mutant beasts, nearly invincible in the same tier. Now these top-tier forces were launching an assault on Sunset City. One could imagine what this entailed. Massacre. A horrible massacre. Each general and even the great beast had formed their own battlefield, and almost no mutant beast dared to step inside these battlefields. This was because each of their attacks were simply too terrifying. For instance, Pteranodon had cleared an area of 1,000 meters in just one breath, eliminating hundreds of enemies. The mammoth, Tundra, had blown dozens of people into a bloody mist with just one charge. His massive body, coupled with his hundreds of tons of weight, along with his spiritual energy, he was no different than a meat grinder. Not to mention the 2 most terrifying figures at the center of the battlefield. Bull Demon with his humanoid body and the head of a bull holding a massive axe, looked like a demon from hell, fierce and terrifying. Facing him was the mayor of Sunset City, a middle-aged man wielding a saber. However, his breathing was increasingly rapid. On a closer looker, the area between his thumb and index finger was split, and his sleeves were dyed in red. If one were to guess, his entire arm was mostly useless. All of this was because his opponent was Bull Demon, a figure that could be described as terrifying. Heaving a long, deep breath, Nieyuan's gaze became extremely solemn. Faintly, a tinge of fear flashed in the depths of his eyes. Horrifying, truly horrifying. This humanoid mutant beast is just too formidable. And it is not just its fearsome physique. Glancing at the notch on his saber, Nieyuan could not help but be a little incredulous. This saber was crafted from the hardest alloy in China, yet when it clashed with the massive axe of the humanoid mutant beast, the axe left a crack on his saber. Damn it. Nieyuan could not help but curse in his heart, feeling extremely helpless. Shit, this is meaningless. We were already inferior in terms of physical strength, and now we're even losing to them in weapons. God damn it. Are you kidding me? After all, the reason humans could fight against the mutant beasts now was because they were fully armed, wielding sharp weapons or wearing strong suits of armor for protection. But now, even humanoid mutant beasts that could use weapons had appeared. And these weapons were better than those of humans? Nie Yuan was filled with helplessness and confusion. Of course, there was also frustration. However, as he looked at the terrifying figure approaching him with slow and steady steps, a determination flickered deep in Nie Yuan's eyes. A determination to fight, a fight to the death. This was a battle he could not afford to lose. With this in mind, his astounding spiritual energy began to envelop his right arm. More importantly and terrifyingly, a dense wind element started spreading along his saber, reaching tens of meters in length in just a flash. From a distance, it looked as if a tiny figure was holding a wind blade that was tens of meters long. Desert Storm Slash. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 297, Fangs from the Depths of Darkness. The Desert Storm Slash, it was Nie Yuan's most powerful combat technique, which allowed him to form an energy blade dozens of meters long by gathering a large amount of wind element. However, if one took a closer look, they would notice that the energy blade was composed of countless tiny blades, which would tear the enemy into shred in an instant upon contact. From a microscopic perspective, it could even cut through cells. It was a terrifying combat technique. And now, this terrifying technique was radiating brilliance on the battlefield. The next moment, Nie Yuan, holding the massive energy blade, leaped into the air and slashed toward the incoming bull-headed humanoid creature, Bull Demon. Swoosh. Tearing through the air, the enormous energy blade came bearing down. An energy blade. A murmur escaped from Bull Demon as he looked at the cyan energy blade falling from the sky, his pupils slightly contracting. Given his strength, he could naturally sense the threat posed by this energy blade. But a cold smile tugged the corners of Bull Demon's lips, as if he had thought of something. No matter how powerful the move is, it would be in vain if it can't even hit the target. Moreover, I still have some cards up my sleeve. Thinking this, a purplish-black halo suddenly flickered deep in Bull Demon's eyes. Anti-gravity field, muttering softly, an inexplicable force emerged in the void. The next moment, a round of purplish-black illusory halo appeared under Nie Yuan. What's this? Amazed, Nie Yuan had a slight change in his expression, sensing the purple-black illusory halo. Nonetheless, as he had already unleashed the energy blade, he could not turn back. Go to hell. Roaring thunderously, Nie Yuan increased his output of spiritual energy. However, just at this moment, boom. His body suddenly shook as an inexplicable force assailed him. Nie Yuan felt as if an invisible wall had appeared in front of him. With a muffled sound, half his body was bounced back. More frighteningly, a sense of weightlessness struck him. For a moment he lost partial control of his body. Shit. Nie Yuan's face abruptly changed. He could not help but feel a sense of tightness grip his heart. But before he could react, with a roaring boom, a fearsome force struck him. It's too late. Lightly laughing, Bull Demon swung the massive axe. Boom. Accompanied by a thunderous boom, Nie Yuan was sent flying like a shooting star. What was even more astonishing was that after flying for 2 kilometers, he slid on the ground for another 100 meters. Cough, cough, Nie Yuan broke into a series of coughs, his face pale as paper. In his lower abdomen there was a wound that almost split in half. It was half a meter long and he was profusely bleeding from it. One could even see his innards as well. The wound was gruesome and horrifying. At this moment, it seemed that the entire battlefield had become silent, noticing the situation of the central battlefield. Did the mayor lose? Even the Tier 2 mayor was defeated? A voice, seemingly from nowhere, suddenly broke the deathly silence, bringing the entire battlefield to silence for a moment. Slowly raising their gazes, everyone vaguely saw a demonic figure with a bull's head and a humanoid body, standing against the wind. In an instant, it covered everything, shrouding everyone's minds. Everyone was terrified, extremely terrified. And while everyone was reeling from this terror, a chill gripped everyone's heart. How could a mutant beast of this level exist? While everyone was finding it difficult to accept, the mutant beast showed no hesitation. For a moment, more than half of the entire Sunset City fell into chaos. At this time, not far from Sunset City in a suburban area. Tap, tap, tap. Amid sounds of rapid footsteps, a small figure could be seen running through the forest in panic. On a closer look, his chest appeared to have been caved in, bearing the imprint of a fist. This one punch had almost robbed him of half his combat power. So much so that even the strongest ninja of Japan had to flee in embarrassment. Just how can such a small thing have so much power? Recalling that golden ant, Sato still could not believe it. A mutant ant just the height of a fist had sent him flying hundreds of meters with just one punch. If he did not have some tricks up his sleeve, that punch would have taken his life. However, even so, he was in a precarious state now. No, I must bring the reincarnation of Yamada no Orochi back. Once I'm there. Wiping the blood stains from the corner of his mouth, Sato tightened his grip on the three-headed snake in his arms. However, at this moment, as if discovering something, Sato's eyes suddenly brightened as he caught sight of a tall and beautiful figure on the road ahead. The next moment, he recognized the tall and beautiful figure. She was one of the most famous prodigies in China, the Flame Princess Ling Er. Miss Ling, please help me, a mutant beast is chasing me, help me block it for a moment, I am a delegate of Japan. Miss Ling? Shouting in an excited and surprised voice, Sato even turned his head and glanced back at the golden ant that had just emerged from the deep forest. Help you. A smile filled with an indescribable charm curled Ling Er's lips. However, for some reason, seeing this smile, a bad feeling suddenly surged in Sato's heart. At this moment, if he were to look back, he would surely discover that the mutant beast chasing him, the golden ant, was already standing still with its arms crossed. Why? Sato felt suspicious, but Sato did not turn back and kept rushing toward Ling Er. At this moment he had no choice. The Flame Princess Ling Er was one of the rare prodigies in China, and his last beacon of hope. And just as he was about to approach the figure not far away, a breeze blew on his face. The next moment Sato felt a tightness around his neck. Sato's eyes went wide, horrified at the sight of an arm formed of spiritual energy firmly grabbing his neck. You, in a voice full of disbelief, the three-headed Slytherin slipped off Sato's hands. Picking up Slytherin, Ling Er affectionately caressed it. Then, without even looking at Sato, she walked slowly toward the nearby golden ant. Eldest sister, Golden Ant greeted in a very respectful manner, lowering his proud head. Golden Ant naturally remembered the eldest sister who had saved it from the hands of the humans. If he owed the divine tree for cultivation, then Ling Er was like his second parent. It seems like you've been doing well lately. With melodious laughter like tinkling of silver bells, Ling Er gently put down Slytherin in her hands. Then she ordered, "Tell Bull Demon and the others to retreat. The Chinese reinforcements have arrived and I can't intercept them." Yes, eldest sister. Without hesitation, Golden Ant gladly accepted the order. Shortly after Golden Ant left with Slytherin, Ling Er slowly turned around and looked at Sato, who was being firmly held by a hand of spiritual energy by his neck. Did you see it? Ling Er asked with a smile, watching the incredulous Sato. No. Sobbing, Sato, whose face had turned red due to lack of oxygen, looked at Ling Er with a gaze full of horror. A prodigy of China, one of the most famous, is actually... Before he could continue with his thoughts, an extremely cold voice echoed in the void. Anyone who plans against my misty mountains will die, not just you. Even your Japan behind you shouldn't expect an easy time. As the words fell, a crack rang as Sato's head tilted to one side. Only fear and disbelief remained faintly on his face. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 298, The Torrent of Black and White. The beast tide from Misty Mountains was extremely fierce and terrifying. It almost destroyed the defensive line of one of China's 10 new cities in an instant. What was even more frightening was that the status of the mayor of the city, a Tier 2 superhuman, was unknown. However, such a fearsome beast tide receded like a tide, much to the bewilderment of countless people. Not only were the people of Sunset City dumbfounded, even the defending troops were left in astonishment. Only they heard a vague bellow in the distance, and the horde of mutant beasts retreated like a tide, which was rather terrifying and ominous. What a terrifying discipline! Supporting a commander, Li Si's eyes couldn't help but flicker. The mutant beasts from the depths of Misty Mountains had another frightening aspect. Their discipline was even more stringent than that of humans. The entire horde might seem chaotic, but they actually have clear hierarchical divisions and extremely strict ranks. In the hands of a talented commander, they could become the most fearsome army. An army that could not be easily shaken. Li Si, who had already recognized the terrifying nature of the mutant beasts of Misty Mountains, chose not to clash with those powerful mutant beasts right away, but instead he chose to engage with slightly weaker ones. This way he didn't suffer too much damage. As for his colleagues, especially some self-proclaimed geniuses, they were already buried on the battlefield, their fates unknown. The mutant beasts that emerged from the depths of Misty Mountains were beyond the description of the word, terrifying. If ordinary mutant beasts could be dealt with by the Black Armor Army, then in the face of these creatures from the heart of Misty Mountains, unless one possessed a numerical advantage of 10 times their number, one might as well run as far as possible. At this moment, if one were to look up at the battlefield, they would see how terrifying these creatures from the heart of Misty Mountains truly were. As far as the eyes could see, everything lay in ruins. The tall city walls had collapsed, the ground was split apart, and buildings lay wasted on the ground. What was even more frightening was that the remaining spiritual energy was still undulating in the air, occasionally accompanied by arcs of lightning or flames. Meanwhile, on the way back to Misty Mountains. "Second brother, are we really retreating like this?" Tyrannodon spoke with a hint of complaint, seemingly dissatisfied. His bloodthirst had just arisen, but they had retreated halfway. It was quite unsatisfying, to be honest. Old Fifth, Golden Ant said this is eldest sister's order. Momentarily pausing his steps, Bull Demon explained, recalling the message transmitted by Golden Ant a few moments ago. Eldest sister? Hearing this term, Tyrannodon fell silent. If Misty Mountains still had an existence that was mysterious to these 9 great beasts, it would undoubtedly be the eldest sister. These newly joined beasts only knew that the eldest sister had been following the divine tree the longest and was the most terrifying existence. As for the rest, they knew nothing. However, one thing was certain, even Big Sister Nine Tails and second brother Bull Demon dared not question eldest sister's orders. In the absence of the divine tree, her commands were absolute. But Tyrannodon, as if having thought of something, was also a bit puzzled. Where is eldest sister? Did she come today? Why didn't I see her? I don't know. Shaking his head, Bull Demon sighed and then affirmed, however, what is certain is that eldest sister must be silently watching us. Since she gave such an order, there must be a reason. Saying this, Bull Demon swept a glance at the mutant beasts before instructing Sarcosuchus. Fourth brother, count our casualties. Also bring any injured mutant beasts to your spirit lake. If their injuries are severe, take them to the spirit pond in the North Canyon. Yes, second brother, Sarcosuchus nodded and accepted the order. His spirit lake could heal minor injuries, but was hardly effective on severe injuries. On the other hand, nurtured by the divine tree for a long time, the spirit pond in the North Canyon had an extraordinary concentration of life essence, sufficient to heal most injuries. At this moment, as if sensing something, Bull Demon suddenly paused. Looking up, he saw the earth undulating not far away. After a while, several figures emerged from the ground. They were the statuesque Qing gang, covered in leaves, thorns, Old Fifth, Golden Ant, and the slim and slender, Lung Foam. Of course, the most important were the strange snake in Cold Edge's arms and Lupin lying on his shoulder. Good, good. Bull Demon laughed in succession, watching the lively antics of the strange snake and Lupin with satisfaction. As long as they are okay, everything is all right. Yeah. Nodding slightly, Golden Ant took a step forward, looked at the numerous mutant beasts and explained, I just met eldest sister. She told me that China's reinforcements are about to arrive, so Is that so? Bull Demon heaved a slight sigh, realizing the crux of the matter. At the end of the day, China was just too strong. Without the divine tree, their strength was indeed insufficient to challenge it. Fortunately, he successfully rescued Slytherin and Lupin. Otherwise, Bull Demon would have a hard time escaping blame. In this case, it was wise to retreat now. While Sunset City had been destroyed, their army had not suffered much casualties. It was the classic case of taking advantage and running. Thinking about this, Bull Demon felt a slight joy in his heart. All's well that ends well. Continuously laughing, Bull Demon led the beast tide toward the direction of Misty Mountains. At this moment, what Bull Demon and the others did not know was that shortly after they left. Boom, 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 accompanied by quaking of the ground, a torrent of black and white appeared in the horizon. The interweaving black and white at the horizon looked exceptionally beautiful. What was even more astonishing was that these people happened to be wearing black and white cloaks on their backs, which were flapping loudly against the strong wind. Yet this was still not the most noteworthy thing. What truly caught everyone's attention was the 3-meter-long blood-colored spear in the hands of these cold and aloof figures. The sharp spearheads radiated a cold gleam, akin to moonlight. It was both cold and scary. Sorry for being late. Amidst a cold and indifferent voice, the black and white torrent had arrived on the battlefield. Silently gazing, countless knights stood tall with indifferent expressions, like ancient sculptures. However, with their arrival, the entire battlefield fell into a deathly silence. Not to mention cries and wails, even the groans had vanished. It was as if an invisible pressure had shrouded the entire battlefield. This was China's Iron Knights, the legendary force whose terror was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. There were even rumors that if the internal situation of China was stable, China could penetrate half the continent, reaching all the way to northern Europe, relying on the Iron Knights. Meanwhile, on a distant mountain peak, several figures silently gazed at the distant black and white torrent. I didn't expect that the government would actually send Lan here, muttering in a slightly surprised voice. Ling Er also showed a bit of astonishment. Lan, one of the 3 commanders of the Iron Knights, was also a Tier 2 superhuman. Coordinating with his mount, the panda, his combat power far exceeded others of the same tier. He was one of the few individuals that even Ling Er regarded with some apprehension. However, Lan had always been stationed along the coastal areas. Now he had unexpectedly arrived inland. It was easy to guess what this meant. It seems that misty mountains have made quite a few people lose too much sleep. With melodious giggles akin to the twinkling of silver bells, Ling Er turned around slowly. However, at this moment, if one looked closely at the several figures behind Ling Er, they would notice that each of these strange humanoid figures was surrounded by a dense crimson color. Not only the Iron Knights but also the Iron Man unit had sent troops. However, this secret task force that had arrived early, consisting of over 100 people, all perished at the hands of Ling Er's Genomarines. The reason being that they came too early and posed a potential threat to Misty Mountains. Thus, they met their demise. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.